What's up, guys? We got a huge show for you tonight, and looking forward to getting started.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Dude, I
Let me
mean,
something.
so the past week of streams, it's kind of just been us talking about global problems, financial problems, the stuff that's been building up in the news for a while. There hadn't been a lot of like really phenomenal clips to come out, but we knew and we saw when the Tucker interview came out with Fuentes, didn't we, Tim? We knew and we saw and we thought that there was going to be some sort of reaction to this.
Of course.
And we didn't know what that was going to look like. But as these people always seem to do, they like to hold big events and crash out. And I have a bunch of phenomenal clips from this Republican Jewish coalition event where people like Ted Cruz, people like Officer Talmud, people like Mark Levin, and like basically any crazy like Christian Zionist person or super pro-Israel person crawl out from under a rock. They were at this event. And, you know, we talk a lot about the problems globally, and we talk about the situation domestically with AIPAC and stuff. And we talk about the Israeli-Gaza war and the humanitarian issues, to say the least, of the stuff that's happened there. But at its core, Tim, when you hear people talk about Israel, isn't it in context of not wanting them in our government?
Yeah,
Isn't
I mean,
this
they
what you
talk
hear?
about Mossad, they talk about people infiltrating our government, but in general, I think most people have the consensus that, you know, Israel shouldn't be, you know, as in bed as they are right now. But, you know,
Right.
I think most of the complaining, not even saying complaining, but most of the conflicts that people have with Israel is just because they've gone too far at this point. I think if they had
Well,
relaxed on everything, they
Mhm.
probably wouldn't have as much backlash from the general population.
Well, these people who say, look, to say that it's a conspiracy, that we have all this power, we don't have all this power. We're just this one group of people. And I get that argument. I hear that argument. But when you have the most powerful people in the government come to this giant gala to get just like get on Tucker Carlson's neck after he interviews Nick Fuentes just like one time, like they're acting like he literally like was a Nazi. Tucker himself.
You think Turning Point has something to do with this a little bit?
I mean, they've set this event up to look much like Turning Point,
Right.
you know, but I don't know.
And they have a big issue with him too.
Look,
Fuentes.
yeah, I've heard a lot of differing things on this. I've heard it from people, you know, like I won't reveal my sources. I can't reveal my sources, but I've heard much the same thing. So we get this coalition, we get this gathering of just kind of like the worst swamp creatures in DC. They all come to this event. And I want to play for you first because you don't know what to expect yet. You haven't seen this stuff on Twitter.
I haven't seen this.
I watched this stuff on Twitter, and then I watched the full interviews all day today. And I got to say, like, watch the full Randy Fine one and watch the full Ted Cruz one. There's a lot of real issues there.
Yeah.
But Lindsey Graham, I guess, just shows up for pure love of the game. And he's not even really on topic.
What boy?
He's just talking about death, dude. Like, yeah, he's like, oh, I got to murder all those boys with little Zelensky, and I want to do it more. And we're going to go to this and we're going to play it now. And Tim, I want you to take this in. This is what American politics at its finest is, as a complete shit show.
He recognized Jerusalem as capital of Israel.
My bad.
Why?
Guys, go ahead and repost the stream. That way we can get some people in here as well.
All right, check this out, Tim.
He recognized Jerusalem as capital of Israel. Why?
Why?
Because if you got a problem with that, take it up with God. He's the guy that did it, not Trump.
I mean, this is just insane.
So I just want to say, I feel good about the Republican Party.
I feel good about it.
I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
Wow.
Take it in, Tim.
Wow.
This is good stuff right
Trump is my favorite president. We've run out of bombs. We didn't run out of bombs in World
War
II.
Okay. All right. Look, we have to pause nearly every second because it really is all this. It's truly important. We've run out of bombs. That's why he's my favorite president.
Yeah, it's insane. He's like, we're killing the right people, guys. We're killing the right people.
The death toll on the boats in Venezuela is up to 61, by the way.
Yeah.
61 people. It's truly insane. Going back to the clip.
So, as a coalition of Republicans, some Baptist, some Jewish, we organize ourselves around principles that we love and we cherish. We love individual freedom. We love entrepreneurship. We love capitalism.
He doesn't say God because he can't say his name.
We love Israel. We love.
So just as important as freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to do business, freedom to refuse service is loving Israel. This is like one of the tenets of the party and of the values.
He's just like basically just get in bed with them already. Just
He
on his knees, just cranking it.
He is, and that's a serious problem. It's not right. We can't have our politicians do that.
The idea of Israel. We love the struggle they've been involved in.
I think it's
we
erotic.
love them, helping them because you're helping yourself. So to those who worry about these stupid interviews and far off places, don't worry. The Republican Party has figured it out when it comes to Israel. We understand that Israel is a friend of America to the bitter end. We understand that God blesses those who bless Israel. And where I come from, I figured that crap out when I was 6 years old.
All right, so he figured out when he was 6 years old, apparently he was smart enough to be like, if I want to make money in politics, I have to love Israel. So this all dates back to the Schofield Bible, which was something that Oxford published in I believe the early 1910s or something. And this Bible has a lot of the language changed in the New Testament and some of the Old Testament relating to the biblical covenant of Abraham to Israel and then leading into Revelations, right?
Right.
So the context for the verse that everyone refers to all the time, and Lindsay's referring to it here, bless Israel and you'll be blessed, curse Israel and you'll be cursed. It is referring to Abraham's seed when it's talking about Israel. So Abraham, of course, the father, Isaac, Jacob, going down to David, and then going into Jesus Christ, right?
Yeah, because Jesus imagined missiles, cruise missiles when the Bible is written,
Dude, this is true. Yes, this is true. Jesus, fuck all the Bible stories and all that. Respectfully, Lord, forgive me and help me. The truth is, Jesus wanted hellfire missiles. This is the Protestant Christianity that we see, and it's complete. I see why people don't believe in God when you got people like Lindsay.
You know what he deserves? You know what he deserves?
Yeah, it's clown time. It's clown circus. Mr. Lindsey Graham, you have won the award. Look at this guy, this soulless beaver who has taken over our government. And he saunters off to spend another, $500K in Ukraine partying with the rent boys. This guy's notorious for going overseas and, taking advantage of wartime circumstances.
Yeah, but does he look like a guy who would be on the front line?
No, he would never fight. In fact, here's the interesting thing about him. He was in the Army. Guess what he did in the Army?
Probably like one of those mechanics that never leave the base.
He called himself the combat lawyer, Tim.
Oh, what is that?
Oh, I did law and I wear a little green armor suit and I like it. That's what that is. But I got more from this. So Lindsay he was gloating. He was thinking about the death. He was getting an erection from all the murder. And he just kind of did his, he was on a power trip. We've got Mark Levin here outlining just why it's important to just take out Tucker Carlson, or as Josh Hammer said, to eliminate. Is that what he said?
Neutralize.
Forgive me. Neutralize. Here we go. Check out Mark Levin here.
It is my greatest hope that the people who are appearing at this wonderful organization, RJC, who've come up here and spoken to you, will do what they say they're going to do. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. For 6 months, I've been fighting these bastards, whether it's Tucker Carlson,
for 6 months,
or whether it's Nick Fuentes. And I've been looking over my shoulder looking for help. And you know what I found? Nothing. Nothing.
This isn't even the good Levin clip.
We're here today to do something about this.
We're here to do something about it.
His name is Truth Ultra.
Huh?
No.
Is that his actual handle?
First of all,
this is just a guy flipping.
My wife, my mother-in-law, my dear friend, Ron, Rhoda, all of you, Norm. I can't see. The lights are in my eyes. Anyway.
I can't see. The lights are in my eyes.
What do you mean we don't cancel people? We canceled David Duke.
I'm Mark Levin.
Donald Trump canceled David Duke. We canceled Pat Buchanan.
Okay, do you know who Pat Buchanan is, Tim?
I've heard of him.
So this is where the term paleocon comes from.
Yeah.
These were the conservatives that were skeptical about overseas dealings and were skeptical about the big government and the spending. And these are the people that truly, like people like my dad or Fuentes, are kind of descended from, ideologically wise. They bent the other way and were willing to start asking the same sorts of questions that people have been doing for the past 20 years since like the Iraq War, right? But they were preamble. They were before they kind of called the whole thing. So you're going to hear him say another name, John Birch Society. Those people, they have a long history, but they're not like Nazis. They're not evil. They're not Heiling Hitler. They're just against Israel. So he's gonna David Duke. You know who David Duke is?
Dude, I'm
okay. He was a part of the KKK.
Oh, all right.
So, but he's conflating David Duke to other groups of people like Pat Buchanan and like the John Birch Society. It's not applicable to.
Right.
But you see, he just throws everything into the blender because he likes to make smoothies at Big Fat Whale.
On Birch Society, we canceled Joseph Sobran. We canceled pornography on TV. We cancel stuff all the damn time.
I like
Hitler admirers, Stalin admirers, Jew haters, American haters, Churchill haters. You're damn right we're going to cancel them and deplatform them.
So I thought this language was dead. And we were promised that this language was dead and would never come back, and that, oh, we're the right and we fight for free speech. And, you know, the liberals used to say, I don't agree, but I defend to the death your right to say it. We say that now. In like less than a year after Trump winning, it all just immediately goes out the window.
Right.
It completely goes out the window. And you're like, yes, we will deplatform you if you offend us. How dare you say that Jewish people?
And it's insane because he's Republican, and just 2 years ago, Republicans were complaining about all the censorship that was happening when the Democrats were in power.
Right.
So now you're calling to do the exact same thing.
Never Trumper, by the way. Super anti-Trump first term, and like, but these are the new hallmarks of the party, not the people.
Hold on, this guy is the hallmark of the party.
Yeah,
that deserves.
I'm here to date your 6-year-old.
That's the type of guy.
There he is.
That's the type of guy right there,
ladies and gentlemen.
It's called the market system. They don't have a lifetime job like a bureaucrat who we're going to protect.
They don't have a lifetime job like a bureaucrat who we're going to protect. Why are we going to protect the bureaucrats, Mark? I mean, that's the Freudian slip right there. See, if you're a part of the government system,
right,
then he's like, oh, we'll find a place for you. You're part of the administration. But if you're just a person, he will ruin your life.
It's because you can't control the guy who's not in the system.
Right.
You know, if he had his way, he would already fire Tucker and Fuentes.
I mean, this guy is a real piece of work.
And if they're your friend, there's something wrong with you.
Oh,
no Hitler admirer, Holocaust denier, platformer should be anybody's friend, as a matter of fact.
I really just hate when people use these like giant catastrophes to push agenda.
Right. Well, I mean, it's the thing, if you hold up the giant atrocity and you're like, just because this happened means that no one can criticize me again 100 years into the future.
Right.
And like, here's the thing. There's trauma involved. There's a nightmare of the event involved. There's all of that. But at the end of the day, it didn't happen to you. Right. And the way that there's a Randy Fine clip, I'm not sure if it's included in my slideshow that I have here, but I watched the full Randy Fine interview. And in the full Randy Fine interview, he tells this story about like being 12 and he's not able to like eat at the lunch table. And like his principal saves his life by hiding him because they hated him because he was Jewish. I guess in Florida or wherever he's from. I just look.
Seems a little bit extreme.
Look, we can't make claims about people. This is all pure speculation. But I mean, it's a crock of bullshit, ladies and gentlemen.
You don't get to wrap your psychotic, mental,
I love his voice, though.
unhinged, Nazi, Klan, jihadist, bullshit.
And see, it's all the same. Klan, jihadist, like it's just everything he can think of to scare you. He's got to throw it out.
Around American patriotism. You don't get to claim you're MAGA and America first when you're lining up with the Marxists and the Islamists and Hamas and the terrorists. That's
wait. But we just invited Syria's.
Look, that doesn't matter at all. Trump is the greatest person ever. You're insane, Tim.
That statement is counter.
It's all hypocrisy. It's all complete bullshit. Like, it's not real. Like, think about this. They had this giant event. They probably paid like $30 million to get this whole thing done.
Yeah.
And they invite all these people and the biggest political donors and the AIPAC people, and everyone's there. And they're all gathered in suits, in dresses to watch a stage full of the con men that they pay go out there and yap their yap. And the only way this works is because they all believe it. They all believe that it's real, but at a certain level, they're like, yeah, this is all bullshit. This is just how we all get paid.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, this guy giving his speech does not get me, up in arms and being like, let's defend Israel.
Well, it's not for you. It's not for me either. It's for his bosses.
It's for the base.
No, the people that pay this guy are here.
Yeah, that's true.
Like that's who this is a job audition.
I didn't even know this organization existed. This had to come around more recently.
They pop up out of nowhere, man.
Because here's the thing. How much you want to bet Mossad and Netanyahu's like in bed with these people too? Because he said openly, hey, we go into social media and we push propaganda.
There's photos of Netanyahu and Levin together, and Levin looks like he's about to like ejaculate. Like seriously, it's crazy. And like all these, it's a small club, and you're not in it. But let's go to Ted Cruz now.
Cruise missile.
Ooh, that's good.
Cruise missile.
I've never heard that one before, and it works. That works really well. I think he's Cuban as well. Okay. All right. This is his Christian Zionism speech.
And replacement theology is a twisted view that the Jews are no longer God's chosen people, that the promises in the Old Testament no longer apply.
Yeah, Jesus fulfilled the Old Testament.
And that Christians have replaced Jews. Now, in my Bible, I believe every word of it is true, and I believe every promise that God made to the people of Israel remains a promise that is made to the chosen people.
Who I serve and worship.
Amen.
Like,
Amen.
That's your God.
And the last I checked, Jesus was a Jew. And I will tell you, at least for me, I am very proud to be a Christian Zionist.
Ooh.
And replacement theology is a twisted view that the Jews are
Coming
no
out
longer
and
God's
saying you're a
chosen people, that
Zionist
the promises
like that
in the
boldly.
Old Testament no longer apply.
That's very bold.
I mean, but see, this is what they have to do. They have to normalize the identity. They have to bring it out. Like, this is what people are supposed to believe is okay now. Yes, I'm your congressperson or senator, Ted Cruz from Texas. I'm your senator, but I'm a member of this like fringe political and religious sect, by the way.
Weren't they much more careful about saying they're Zionists?
Yeah, they didn't say this before. It's all out in the open now because they don't have an opportunity. See, when you're caught doing something like they were caught doing in Gaza with all the weapons and whatnot, you don't apologize. That's the worst thing you can do.
Double down.
This is the strategy. You never apologize. You double down. You make it 10 times worse because people are like, oh, I can't even believe this anymore. Like, it's so insane. So then they just stop thinking about it.
That's true.
So like this is what they're doing, is they're normalizing this, and that's why, Tim, they're on that $30 million stage with all those people. It's like doing a dress rehearsal for a new societal trend.
I wonder how much each of them are getting paid.
Probably a lot. I would say definitely you're here. You're getting six figures as a speaker.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the oldest time political racket, is you get money as a speaker after your term in office. But wow,
Daddy BB's giving that money.
Yeah. But here we go here's the Tucker attack specifically. I was looking for that. I kind of put it a little too far to the back.
But I'm here for the kids down here because it's easy
Here for the buffets.
to talk about anti-Semitism on the
Giant
left.
fat.
I want to talk about the dark force rising on our side. Multiple speakers have talked about the rise of anti-Semitism on the right.
Uh-huh.
But it is not enough to speak in platitudes or generalities about the fight. We must call evil by its name. 5 years ago, if I was talking to my father, who's watching, hi Dad, if I was talking to my father at 8:59 p.m. at night, he would say, Randy, I gotta go. Tucker Carlson's gonna be on. But make no mistake, today, Tucker Carlson is the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. He has chosen to take on the mantle of leader of a modern day Hitler Youth, to broadcast and feature.
All right.
Who did he say that about?
He's saying that about Fuentes. He's saying the Groypers are modern day Hitler Youth. I would disagree with that on multiple different levels, but I mean, you're kind of speaking it into existence, man. And that's the thing. That's the other half of this. This is also like what they call like sympathetic magic, and it's very dark. It's when you pay to have something made like this. It's like astroturfing a person, and then you kind of create that entity.
Right. Because here's the thing, like I don't think it's anti-Semitic to just simply make a statement like, hey, we should probably stop killing people, right? But then just taking a position against a wrongdoing in general just makes you anti-Semitic.
I'm kind of steelmaning the position because I'm talking about it referring to Fuentes. People in the chat are saying he's referring to Tucker, and I think he is.
He might be.
What's your opinion on this?
I think.
What did you take from?
I think my issue with these things is like they feel like they have to like defend every inch of criticism against, you know, the right-wing Zionist Israeli coalition that's going on.
Right.
And it's like, you know, it's weird to see this type of behavior because, you know, I don't condone, you know, people being literally anti-Semitic where they're like out there and we're like, we've got to kill the Jews and then like preaching violence against Jews. Like that's dumb. That's retarded. Like I don't think that is something that you should be able to push forward. And there are some Palestinians and some Muslims that are on that bandwagon where they're like, okay, we just have to eliminate the Jews essentially. Like,
but it makes sense from their perspective.
It makes sense.
You know, it's war for them, so it's different.
Yeah, it's more charged. But for us people in the middle,
Right.
I'm just the black guy that's watching all the white people go crazy right now. And it's like, how are you gonna go?
What's the view in the black community about all this?
Dude,
shit?
all the black people are pro-Palestine. That's what's happening right now.
Right, because they see it as like another like kind of like oppression project.
It's that, but it's actually more Trump. You know how like anything Republican, anything Trump, anything that he supports
is bad.
Yeah. That's how the African American community is like these days, where it's just you go on Instagram, you go on the Shade Room, you go on some of these other platforms, and it's like, you know, Trump is the evil man. Anybody who's aligned with him is evil as well. But at the end of the day, my perspective on this, you can't be anti-Semitic strictly from just making statements about wrong accusations.
I mean, just interviewing someone as well.
Yeah,
right. Like, it isn't that insane?
How are they any different than the Democrats who are basically just being like, okay, we've got to silence that person. Oh, COVID. You think you're going to talk about this thing? No.
But see, Tim, the COVID narrative, that's far away. That's a few years ago. We don't care about that anymore. We care about the wars now. And this is what they do. This is how they strip freedom from us, Democrat and Republican. This is the protocol. This is the program, at least that I've observed since being politically active since like Obama Romney, right? This is what I've observed as a human being living in America. What they do is they have this giant fight. And it happens every presidential election cycle. There'll be a new crisis. There'll be something to deal with. Obama, like unemployment, you know, natural disaster.
Right.
And then leading into Trump, you have the Russia scandal, and that's all anyone cares about. That's all they fight about. Then you have Biden, and it's the border and it's COVID, and it's just all wrapped into one. And through each one of those crises, they're able to extract some small right or some civil liberty. They're able to just take it away. And then people forget that it even happened. When the people have legitimate grievance to sue the government for what happened during COVID and for being forced to take an experimental shot that we really knew nothing about and still don't know anything about, and the long-term testing was never there for it, but they lied and said that it stopped transmission, which it never did. So we have to think about things like this. And now we're at the Israel debate. This is the big thing. And I'm sure what will come out of this next couple of years will be some sort of fucked up compromise, right? Where everyone really loses and Israel's still growing and still gaining power and influence. But, you know, maybe Trump's able to save face a little bit. Maybe he's not. Hey, don't annex the West Bank for like another term. Just leave it alone so you can.
No, what's going to come out is 5 years from now. I am speaking this into existence. All of the evil shit that's being done behind closed doors, where people are afraid to whistleblow or talk about because you're in the middle of a conflict and you're under a specific regime, you know, lack of a better term. But,
Right.
you know, there's going to be people that come out and say this is actually what happened. You know, we're going to get the real understanding of we might get the real understanding of what happened on October 7th.
Right.
They're going to talk about soldiers are going to get away from war, right? Because I think this gets solved in 5 years. They're going to talk about all the atrocities
isn't that crazy? 5 years, man.
I know. I don't know how long this is going to go, but I know
it's sad you might be right.
But I think this has to stop before that 5-year mark. But I'm just saying that I think is when you're going to start hearing a lot of these other things, like just like we talk about COVID now, 4 or 5 years later, we get the truth.
100%.
So that's what's going to happen in this case.
Well, I mean, you look at this, and I want people to pay attention to this. Look at this false image that they've been able to create. Look at the kind of new imagery of the new Republican Party. This is like a Trump debate stage. This is like a turning point event. This is the style that they use, the archetype that they
I didn't even see the kids in front.
Yeah, look at this. It's all turning point. It's all RNC. It's all Republican debate. That's what the aesthetic is. They even have the people, you know, with the little red signs and what those.
Tucker is not MAGA.
That's literally the "Make America Great Again" sign, text swapped for "Tucker is not MAGA." So, and Randy Fine, the jiggling overlord above it all, watching them all. Look at this image. Like, this is very dark stuff. And, you know, oftentimes we see the clips, we see the rally, we see the event. We don't know why it bothers us. And it's not just what the person is saying or what they're representing. It's the overall atmosphere. And I haven't seen an event in quite some time that has an overall atmosphere this evil.
It's directed towards one person, which is crazy. And, you know, Tucker's Republican.
Right.
He's literally conservative.
Not kind of Republican. And this is about what the party is.
Right.
It's
like anyone that's not part of the agenda and does not stick to the guns of whatever the agenda of the party is going to get ousted, because Tucker on Fox was like the star child of the right.
Right. And
you know,
you got to keep in mind he had to get off Fox because of the Ukraine stuff.
Yeah.
So it's true. Even though he's what the base supports, he's not what the rulers support.
Right.
So that's what this is all about.
Who do you think? What did Tucker do to piss these people off? Like, I'm really confused at this point. A couple interviews, couple statements, right?
He has represented being anti-war in a way that is really not okay to do, because like that's what it's all about, is preserving the military-industrial complex. He's strongly spoken out about the vaccines, of course, and other people have done that, but he's remained on that. There's some issues that, like, it was a pet issue to be like, you can say this is okay for 6 months. Like, you can fight against this for 6 months and then we have to leave it alone. It's been an opposite thing happening with him, whereas he's stuck to his convictions on these issues. Like,
and he said stuff about Epstein too, which I'm sure that pissed off.
They don't like
Trump.
that. They don't like any questioning of their investigations. That's number one. But I got another Ted Cruz clip, and let's go ahead and play this. This is him more on the offensive.
And then the single most important national security decision the president has made was the decision to launch the bombing raid on the Iran nuclear facilities.
Which we don't know if it even worked.
I can tell you I was on the phone with the president every single week urging him to do that, and I will tell you there are other voices within the administration and without who were telling him not to.
So you got Ted Cruz blowing up the president's phone, begging for the bombs to be dropped. And whatever you think about that, a lot of people have called it a success. I think Iran agreed to back off in the same way that Israel agreed to back off, which is like, we're going to reconstitute, we're going to get ready for war again. I don't really think we stopped too much of anything. That being said, like, these are just people that advocate on your behalf. You know, like, you live in Texas, you want, you know, maybe like better highways, less potholes, you want less crime.
I want I-35 to be fixed.
But Tim, these are not important things. What is important is the bomb and how big the bomb is. And Trump, this guy, our senator is goated because he got the president to drop the biggest bomb.
Yeah. Let's go use Moabs. Let's go fly B-52s. And meanwhile, I feel like I'm driving on I-35 and I'm going to die. Like,
it's not important. It's not important. Ted called me and said, your highways aren't that important. It's true. People are saying it.
That highway has been under construction for the better part of a fucking decade almost. I feel like.
No, it truly is horrible.
Unbelievable.
But these are the people that advocate on our behalf, man. And here we go. You know, they got the DEI as well. We got former police officer Brandon Tatum, I call him Officer Talmadge, demanded that Gaza be turned into a parking lot, quote unquote, for attacking people he called chosen by God. I mean, that's right. He insisted Gaza should serve as a global warning and declare that any country that attacks Israel would cease to exist. He says most Americans don't have common sense.
Let's watch this.
Y'all keep praying for me. I said, I want them to turn that place into a parking lot.
Oh, we love it. That's real.
I gotta
strength right
preface
there.
it because somebody gonna clip this and put it on the internet. Not because
Somebody gonna
of
clip
the
this.
Palestinian people per se, individual people, but because if you dare to do such an atrocity to people that I love, people that I respect, people that are chosen by God, you decide to do something like that, you should never
All right.
have an opportunity
So impressive little verbal trick from Officer Talmud, but it doesn't work this way. Notice how he qualified it by saying people that are I respect, people that I love, people that are chosen by God. So imagine you just cut off that first part where he's qualifying it and you just go, if you do something like this to people that are chosen by God, like, do we live in a cult? Do we live in a cult? Do we have to worship these people?
The first part I had a problem with was the very first statement. I don't care if you clip it. He's sitting here. He's like, I want this to be turned into a parking lot.
Come on, man.
Like,
Right.
you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like, at the end of the day, the only reason why he's feeling this way and justified to say something like this is because it is not his house that's getting turned into a
Right,
parking
right.
lot.
No,
It's
oh,
not
no,
his
no.
family that's being affected at the end of the day.
Absolutely
And
correct.
and here's the thing. Hamas does not represent the entire population of Gaza, right? I mean, yes, there are people that voted Hamas in and they were in power, but I'm positive the people of Palestine are tired of the shenanigans. They don't even give a fuck about either side.
Look, here's the thing. When you got the UN aid stations and you shut them down because you're like, oh, there's corruption, Hamas is getting the food. And then you set up 4 aid stations for a place that's the size of Portland. It's huge, but also small in relative scale. It has like 2 million people in it. Half of them are under 18. You go to this place and say, okay, there's 4 aid centers now. And then you have like artillery and men with rifles kind of lined up around the area to secure it.
Yeah.
And just shoot the people. 12,857 as of last month when I pulled up the statistic on antiwar.com. And that comes from the GHF, the Gaza Health Fund or Ministry. So it's like the accurate number that the Israelis themselves use.
Just not to play devil's advocate, but is that accurate though? Because it is Gaza.
Yeah, no, 12,000 injured.
Reporting that.
12,000 over 800 something injured. And it's like the number was like 2,000 or 3,000 killed.
Okay.
But just think about this. You have these aid centers, you have people like basically crawling towards food, kids crawling towards food, and they just, collateral damage. I accidentally shot you. Like
I accidentally blew up this thing right next to where you were standing.
You'd think this guy who kind of made his name off of talking about, I'm a black guy and the police are cool. Like
this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
He's got no idea.
He just got paid to be on stage as the DEI, the guy who basically just says, okay, well, black people support this too.
Right. I don't think black people support this.
No, they don't.
Certainly
at the
don't.
end of the day.
But
No.
look, he's got the chain out. He's up there spitting on the mic. He's real.
do it
tough
again.
guy.
And it should be an example to everybody in the world that if you ever think
I'm not a
about
part of your
trying
religion.
something like this,
Not a part of it.
your country will cease to exist. Boy, if I was the prime minister,
That's why you're not.
48 hours. Give me 48 hours.
Yeah, I just kill them all. That's what's
Oh my
implied there.
God,
yeah, I'll
dude.
just murder everybody.
Oh,
yeah.
you did.
Oh, Netanyahu, you better.
Oh,
let me
you
in
know
there.
this
I
is
just
gonna
kill everybody.
this is gonna come back to haunt him.
Dude, I
This
mean,
is gonna come back to haunt
it's
him.
so crazy, and that's the thing people are saying about Tucker and Nick. Is like, oh, this will ruin your career, whatever. Ultimately, 2 people having a conversation, even if it's charged, and if you disagree or think some of the viewpoints expressed by Nick are abominable, which I don't, but you might feel that way. This is literally talking about like, oh, if I was in charge, I'd kill as many people as I could because we're in the right. And when you're in the right, you're okay to kill people. Like that's the justification. They say, yes, we are correct. Number one, our position, Christian Zionism, Israel, this is the correct position. And because the position is correct, we get to murder everyone. Like this is literally what he's saying right here. He's saying, yes, my position is correct. These people are awesome. They're chosen by God. And that means anyone that hurts them or anyone that does anything bad to them deserves the nuke. Really. That's what he's saying.
And so it enraged me. And
It made
then
him mad.
I said my statement. I thought that most people in America were thinkers and had common sense. Well, shockingly enough, I was wrong, because after I said it, we see all this anti-Semitism popping up. We see mindless people on campus wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars getting no real education. And they're out here talking about from the river to the sea and don't even know which river it is. You got people out here saying death to Jewish people and gays.
Yeah, but no. Who's saying that shit?
No. I will see. I have seen videos of people saying that, and very angry Palestinians and Muslims. And the only thing about this thing that I agree with him on is the fact of, like, you shouldn't be calling death.
I know. I agree. I feel like this gets thrown out as like he's representing like people of like Nick as of saying that. Nick has never said that.
No. Yeah, neither has Tucker. They're
Right.
intelligent enough to know. It's just the very angry, libs
it
that are
does
just
exist,
angry.
But see, it's this thing of like, oh, I hold up this one thing that has happened is like this is it when you walk down the street, it's like, oh, I hate the Jews. Like this is the environment they act like we live in.
This sucks so much, because if I were to go back 2 years ago before like all this shit happened,
right?
I actually liked Israel for the better part. In a sense, like I was like, oh, they're our allies.
Greatest ally, don't forget it.
But I was just saying, like, at least we have some presence in the Middle East to like be able to like help out with certain things. And it sucks because at the point at which all this is coming out, and then I'm watching these clips, it just like you're not even allowing me to. There's no way for me to defend Israel in this circumstance.
It's tough. It's definitely.
And I don't like to be sounding like I want my $7,000 for this statement, but I don't actually hate Israel. Even after all this shit, I think I'm condemning them for what they're doing, but I'm not necessarily so anti-Israel, the fact that I hate everybody that lives there.
I'm not anti-Israel. All right, we criticize all parts of the
that's exactly my point.
You have my dad's position.
That's exactly what it is for me. That is bad.
I get that, but let's watch the Newsmax, which is kind of like off-brand Fox News. Let's watch their CEO. Just give a quick little take here.
It is said, I've said it before, and I believe it even more strongly today, that Benjamin Netanyahu is the Churchill of our time.
We talked about Churchill and all the bombings he did,
all
the
right,
famines that he did, and all the fun stuff.
For those who did not, catch the last episode Sunday of the Gray Area when we talked about, or it was before that, World War II. Churchill was not the best guy in the world.
No,
he was preached as the savior, but he actually killed millions of people, especially in Bengal in India, where they starved 3 million people in order to aid their war efforts. And he didn't care, and he basically called them apes, essentially. So yeah, okay, let's compare him to
sounds kind of like
Churchill,
like a Fuentes figure, perhaps.
Ignorance, man. I bet you this man has never picked up a fucking history book.
You see, Tim, the people that actually do the racisms, they're the heroes. You see, like this is like well, we talked about Churchill and all the stuff that he did. I mean, but hey, it's the icon these people support.
His leadership against Iran didn't just save Israel, it saved America.
They launched the strikes. On Iran. Bibi Netanyahu directly did that himself. He commanded it. He started the war, which resulted in billions of dollars of property damage and hundreds of Israelis killed, if I remember correctly. So he saved us through the brave leadership of the dear leader, the leader we worship, the great one. It's like Kim Jong-un language. And like you have to signal your support for the leader. And I guess it's always been this way, but you get older, you've seen so many of these videos. It's disgusting. We live in a play. It's children's movie.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that statement.
Yeah,
it's just one big circus, man.
It boggles the mind. And all right, closing this out, we got Floyd Money Mayweather. It's in the name, wearing some kind of like, I don't know, colonial boxing suit or something like this.
It's a Baptist preacher's like robe / like boxer is what.
It's got the American and Israel flag.
Hey,
dude.
Money Mayweather speaks money, man.
Dude, look at this.
They paid him a good $500,000 for this.
Scanning. Manipulate scientific data. Take over, blast, control
I
world
just-
government. Shut down infrastructure.
Take it in, guys.
Ship everything to China. Just look at this person.
Yeah, man.
I love Israel.
And like I said before, I'm not with you guys 10%, 50%. I will always be the voice for the people in Israel. I will always stand behind the country of Israel. The one and only Floyd Money Mayweather in Israel. I will always be here for you guys when you guys don't have a voice.
And my check, please.
And like
Good
I said
boy.
before,
I would like the money.
I'm not with you guys.
Okay, I think we watched it. Okay, so I mean,
money.
all kinds coming out to get paid and to spread the message. And like, let's not forget what this is all about. This is all a singular show directed at one person, Tucker Carlson, and just slandering him online with the conservatives as much as they could do. They brought out all the folks.
You know, and you say all the folks, but like that's the best you can do. The illiterate boxer is
Right,
the
you
one
can't read.
is the one that you want to bring out there and
Read a
represent
Harry Potter
Israel.
book, as 50 Cent said. Read a Harry Potter book. I bet you can't do it. You can't do it. Yeah, we got the illiterate boxer. We have the retired cop who now eats for Israel. Basically, that's what he does. That's what he spends the paycheck on. I got Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham, two of the most war-hungry, bloodthirsty senators that we have in America. And then Mark Levin, really like they call him the chosen one, which is apparently a name Rush Limbaugh gave to him back in the day. You know who Rush Limbaugh is?
I've heard of him, yeah.
Wow. I mean, listen. He's older than me, but listen to the youth. You don't know who Rush Limbaugh is. He was like the gold standard of conservative radio for decades and decades and decades.
Okay. Yep.
And he saw Levin as his successor. He died years back, but he's the chosen one. That's the name Levin has.
Dude, anyone is the chosen one as long as it's pushing their narrative. That's what it comes down to for them.
100%.
Yeah, this is insane, guys. I struggle to watch these videos because it's like, you know, I'm center, right? I'm independent, but then like I lean more conservative, right? But like these things show me why you just can't drink the Kool-Aid. This is exactly why you can't go to one side or the other, because I go to the liberal Democrat side and I just have to basically say, hey, teach my kid about transgenderism. And then I go to the right and they're like, you must beg to the wall. We love Israel. We got to do everything for them. And then you can't even speak out against genocide. So it's time for a new party, man. This is insane.
Indeed. I was looking for more Mark Levin because there's a lot more. And I want to just play a little bit more of him, and then we're going to go ahead and go to the guest. Talk for a little bit, Tim. I'm going to go ahead and share the invite.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, with these types of things, the narrative gets out of control, and I think this is going to come back to bite the Republicans in the ass. I don't see a scenario where maybe a Republican does win the next election, but then, you know, maybe we'll get amnesia in 3 years and there's something going on where like we forget about this moment and like all of the, you know, Mossad money that's being pumped into the Republican Party. Who knows? But like this certainly isn't helping. You know, when we all voted for, you know, I can't say we, but there was a large silent majority of people.
We voted for him. Yeah,
there was a large silent majority of people that were like, oh, Biden's out of control. Let's go for Trump. And like, you know, we were like, oh, this is the party that's going to come in, change things around. And this is what we're getting. Yeah, this is what we're getting. We're getting the same Kool-Aid. So.
I mean, it is different branding. It does have a little bit of a different taste to it. The Democrats, they would have some sort of.
It's got a tone. It's got a taste of racism. That's what it's got.
Definitely. I'd agree with that. I think they've really focused it on like tying the Jewish identity to the Israeli identity, which I think is a very sick thing that historians in the future will really criticize.
And people don't realize just because you're Jewish does not make you Israeli.
Right.
There's European Jews.
Right. Well, look, it doesn't matter. They're the chosen people. They live there. They get to do whatever they want.
Judaism is a religion, by the way. It's not even an ethnicity, but I'm going to get canceled for that.
Little Adolf.
It's both.
Fuentes.
That's how they're able to use it.
He gets here. He's got a little suit on like he's attending a funeral.
Fuentes.
My advice to little Adolf is Just go full, put the brown shirt on. What are you, a coward? Put the brown shirt on. I know you can't grow the Hitler mustache. You're still stuck in your prepubescent stage, but give it a shot. Give it a shot. To Tucker Carlson, I say, did you have a head injury? What happened to you? But you know what? Unlike other people, truly, I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't care why. I
don't
just know
care.
what you are. You platform these people. You deceive your audience. You
I like the way
lie
he
to your
talks, man.
audience. You become a full-blown, out of the closet Jew hater. And if you're a Jew hater, you're a Christian hater.
Wow.
If you're
Yeah. So,
Wow.
so I declare you bad. I say you're bad because you hate X religious identity because I say you hate X religious identity. You're like, I don't care. I'm a Christian. I don't have an opinion. I don't like or hate. Like
No, but like that's the thing. The Christian belief system is like thou shalt not kill is,
Well,
is really the premise of that.
The Old Testament and the laws of Moses, like you're talking about, Ten Commandments, I agree with you there. The thing is, and this is why we don't practice the same religion ultimately, and this is the Protestant heresy that's cropped up in America. It's been grown here since the early 20th century. Jesus is the fulfillment of the Old Testament and all of its laws.
Mhm.
Right? To be a Christian is to be a little Christ. It's to become more like Jesus himself, right? And we're saved through baptism, through accepting the Holy Spirit, and then you become a part of the church, right? So Abraham's seed, as referred to in Genesis, that bless Israel and you'll be blessed, curse it and you'll be cursed, that's referring to the seed, which is Jesus Christ, which is tied to the church. But they want to make it seem like, no, the Old Testament prophecy still applies because ultimately what Judaism is they say, look, y'all believe the Messiah came. We don't believe that. So we're still waiting for the Messiah. So everything you believe about the Messiah is what we would technically believe about the Messiah as well. But you believe he already came, right?
You're right.
So this is the whole thing. So we do not practice the same religion. To be a Christian and not love the modern state of Israel set up 78 years ago, just because you name something doesn't mean it's the biblical thing.
Yeah, and there's
right?
there's 1,000 different ways you can interpret the Bible. There's different ways that you can spin something that's being said. And the problem
they've interpreted it their way.
That's the problem I have is like people use certain scriptures or just like the name of God in general, and it's very convenient to push a narrative.
It's even darker than that. They changed the text. So people argue about translation of the New Testament because the earliest things we have come from like the 3rd and 4th century. And like people theorize that's like enough time or whatever. And there's other like gospels that weren't accepted by the church. Like the first 1,000-year church made the Bible essentially. But the Old Testament before AD in BC, the Greeks were so fascinated by the Old Testament religion that they had copies of it transcribed. And there's a version of it that they had a guy do it. And they're like, this can't be right. You have to do it again. He did it the same way, like 100 times. So that's called the Septuagint. So we actually have like a perfect Greek translation from the time of the Old Testament of what the Old Testament says, perfectly preserved. So we know what it says, and what they did with the Schofield Bible was deliberately change wording in it. So like we have the Old Testament basically.
That's insane.
Isn't that pretty cool?
Yeah.
Like, but
like history is forgotten. It's
and people
very
like
easily.
This guy don't want you to know about it.
Yeah.
They don't want you to know.
Reject Judaism and Christianity, then you reject the American founding based on the Judeo-Christian values and
Yes,
beliefs.
it's all about Israel since the founding of the country when Israel didn't even exist for hundreds of years.
If
It's
you
all about
embrace
Israel.
Hitler, if you play footsie with Hitler, if you think Hitler's misunderstood, if you think Churchill's the reason we had World War II, if you think Churchill was the provocateur, if you think
love
those
Churchill.
things,
He's not a good guy.
I don't want to debate you.
I don't want to debate you.
I don't even care about you.
Kind of based, honestly. He's like, I don't care.
That's not a legitimate position. These aren't powerful people. Seriously? These aren't intelligent people.
If they weren't powerful and they weren't intelligent, why would you make an entire, an entire stage and platform to basically condemn these people? You're scared of what they're going to say in the ether of information that you can't control that narrative. That's the only reason why they're out here doing this.
100%.
Such a lie.
Well, let's talk about it with our guest. Lebanon John is now joining us, guys. I see some of y'all asking for the guest. Go ahead and go to him now, adding him to the stage. Lebanon John, how are you doing tonight?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. How y'all doing?
Oh, thanks for coming on, man. We're doing pretty good. Enjoying coverage of the Republican Jewish coalition. Those
Yeah,
clips are pretty spicy.
this is crazy, man. I was just in a X space like literally 2 minutes ago. It's this new organization called the Anti-Zionist PAC, and Jake Shields was talking in there, and they were trying to tell Jake Shields like to maybe run for office, and they were talking about just very similar stuff to what y'all are talking about, and it's just crazy to go from like one side of the internet to the other side of the internet, and this is definitely the conversation that's dominating everyone's minds right now.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, they put all this out, and it's very clearly they put this whole event together. They spent all the money on it. They got all the biggest speakers they could find. This is all targeted towards one person. It's all targeted towards Tucker. What do you think about the attack?
Fuentes is
Fuentes as well. Yeah. What do you think about the attack?
Yeah, that's fascinating. So Tucker is, he tries really hard to be reasonable with the way he talks, and Nick is an interesting guy. His praise of Stalin definitely threw me for a loop. But I kind of had a feeling he was like,
Right.
a pro tyrant kind of guy. But I'm like an OG Alex Jones fan, where he's like, Stalin took the guns, Hitler took the guns.
Right.
And if you try to take the guns again, 1776 will commence. So that's definitely, I'm more in that camp. So I'm not like pro
I agree.
So, but other than that, Nick's got a lot of good points if he can stick to them. But Tucker, on the other hand, I like Tucker a lot. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I like Tucker a lot. I think Tucker is hilarious. He's goofy, but he's smart. He's sharp. I think Tucker's on point, man. I can't really pinpoint anything Tucker said that's wrong. Can you guys tell me anything he said that's wrong?
No, I mean, I agree with him on most things. I'd give him like 90%. I'm sure there's some things we could find.
There's some nuances sometimes. He's got the little Tucker spin, the new spin on it at certain points, but in general, he's based.
He's what Rogan should have been.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, that's how I view him. Yeah, he's what Rogan should have been.
That is so cool, man. Rogan might still come around. You never know, man. The Gaza issue.
He's pretty indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, Gaza has been the most obvious thing to like unify the left and the right against them, and that clip you guys were just showing of Mark Levin. I mean, his voice is so emotionally charged. It's almost like he's about to, he's almost going to start crying. I mean, it's intense. He's like, he's shaking. He is shaking, man.
It's because he feels threatened. Like he feels threatened by the new movement. He recognizes that he's old, even though he's been given the big show and been given all these things because of who he signals and who he supports. I mean, this is not a feasible career path in 10, 20 years for Mr. Levin. So he's like, okay, if my boomer base is dying off that believes what I tell them to believe, I got to make a stand here. And this is what I said about like apologizing earlier on the stream. You never apologize. The pros always double down. So they're doubling down on their positions.
Right. And he even brought up Winston Churchill saying, if you blame Winston Churchill for World War II, and that was kind of funny because it's almost like, well, now I'm starting to think, you know what I mean? Like, I hadn't really thought of it. Like I had learned it and forgot it because there's so much information. But when he brought it up in that speech, that revealed that their mythology of the narrative of World War II is like crucial to their power. You know what I mean? And so that he thinks that if you think Winston Churchill was a bad guy, that like you should be kicked out of America. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's the problem I have. Churchill was not a saint. Everyone thinks that like he was the savior, and that is the narrative that was pushed in order to like, save face. It's just they didn't have the camera and the little iPhone to record all the atrocities that the British Empire was committing outside of the European chapter. Yes, they were doing good things on the European chapter, but there was an entire war in Asia that no one talks about, and that Churchill basically saw these people as second-class citizens and was like, as long as it's good for Britain, that's all we care about.
Very Machiavellian, very sinister, very anti-Christian.
Indeed. Yeah, but they represent themselves that way. They say, oh no, Lebanon John, you see, I'm a Christian Zionist and I'm proud of it. And they brag about it now because the 78-year-old state of Israel is like, that's their identity. That's what they tie themselves to.
I'm glad you brought that up because they keep bringing up the founding of America and tying it to their project, right? And so this is where you have an issue. And I spoke at the I just spoke on that X space about these people who are anti-Zionist pack. I told them you're going to run into a big problem because there's a deep state in this country that has an agenda, and their agenda, they're not willing to reform this agenda. They're not willing to compromise or reform. And it is for one world government and one world religion. And when these guys like Mark Levin and others keep bringing up the founding of America being tied to modern day Israel, which was founded by the Rothschilds for the purpose of bringing about one world government and one world religion, ultimately, that's really creepy. And I don't appreciate them doing that. And Harrison didn't like that either. Harrison was like, no, that's not true. The founding of America is not for this evil, sinister purpose. They're trying to hijack what was actually something good and trying to make it something evil. Now, I like what Harrison's saying. I really hope Harrison's right, but there's a lot of evidence of some sinister stuff from the beginning. There really is.
Right.
So I don't, either way, we're going to fight to take it back. It doesn't matter. Everyone's fighting to take it back, but
yeah, one thing I'm really sick of is just like the whole concept of religion and how it has to play in war and narratives. Like there's supposed to be
That's the way it's always been.
But like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. We can't get away from that as just human nature to just tie everything to religion, whether it's a holy war or whether it's a crusade or it's a fight against something. Like, here's the thing. Go practice whatever you're going to go practice, but don't bring, your God into it and basically use it as a justification for specific things that have nothing to do. There's natural correlation of things that are right and wrong. I mean, in general, we all know killing bad for the most part. There could be nuances to it depending on who you're talking about. But there could be justification. But overall, that is just a normal thing. Like, that's why society functions. You don't want to just go around and murdering everybody and committing, massacres. So at the end of the day, it's like we're the same peanut cavemen that we were back in these, back in the medieval times, where like the Christian crusade to just go around and just bless everybody with God's word.
Lebanon John's going to fight with you on this.
But I'm just saying, like, I don't want religion to be a part of the narrative when it comes to justifications for specific things that have to do with, agendas independent of whatever God you practice.
Well, Jefferson in the chat touches on this. In war, you have to dehumanize the enemy. It's like rule number one. Yeah, I mean, like that's what we see with the Palestinians, right? Is they're not human beings. Like, we don't care about them. Like it doesn't matter what happens to them. Lebanon John, your thoughts?
Okay, yeah. So I got a lot I can say about that. The difference between Christians, real Christians, and non-Christians is that in the Christian worldview, you can wage war on someone without dehumanizing them. Now, the Catholic Crusades, they killed a lot of Orthodox Christians. So I mean, the history of the Crusades is not that great. Now, there was definitely some good aspects to Crusade because ultimately we believe everything is according to God's will, and that life is very complicated. So it's not like I'm going to flat out condemn or blanket condemn anything. Like, if it exists, it serves a purpose. But we all agree on basic right and wrong. At this point, we've moved past, there's no debate on, like you said, the basic foundations of society. If we all agree on that, then we should enforce that. Now, here's something, what I told that guy, Pastor Sam, and he called me an enemy of God. And when I was talking
really,
about that,
I'm going to ask you about this, but go ahead.
So basically, what you're saying, I'm going to take what you were saying, truism, Tim, and let's take it a step further. So how can they basically have a state religion in this country without us ever voting on it? Right. See, that's the thing. If they want us all to be part of this cult or have one particular interpretation of a scripture, because like you said, there's a lot of different interpretations of the scripture. If they want us to have like a state endorsed version of interpretation of scripture, the only way you could do that in this country is we have to vote on it, I guess, but really it shouldn't happen at all. But if it's going to happen, it's got to be voted on. And if it literally is, everyone votes that we have to be Zionist, dispensationalists, whatever, we have to be Zionist Christians. Okay, that's one thing, but they never voted on it. So that's the thing where it's like the elephant in the room, where there's one interpretation of scripture that the state has endorsed. And we were never told this. Growing up, we were all taught that there's no state religion, but then apparently it turns out there is one. So, I mean, on that note,
that's what I'm saying. The Constitution literally says separation of church and state.
Exactly.
Why are we intermingling these things?
No, it's sinister. It's a cult. It's for control, and they're doing it underneath the surface because in reality, they're not supposed to be doing that, because obviously there's different interpretations of the Christian scripture. And then there's tons of people who aren't even Christians who are citizens with equal rights. So how can we
Exactly.
impose?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, how can we impose one particular denomination upon all the others? And when I tell them this, they lose their mind. And I like this angle of attack a lot, because they can't call us anti-American by saying that we're just adhering to the Constitution and what it says. Because me being first generation American, people are quick to say, "Oh, go back to Lebanon. We don't want your input." So I'm very careful about how I talk. So you can't tell me, "Oh, I'm just a Lebanese guy talking my crazy Middle East nonsense," when I'm telling you, let's just follow the Constitution. So that's the right angle of
No, but
attack.
that is the whole reason why we came out with the Constitution.
It's a very dark thing, I think, to think about the situation from this perspective. So you talk about early Christianity, Lebanon, John, and like we can look at the Byzantine Empire, where, you know, the church and the state were separated to some extent, and the church gave the state some of its powers like execution and whatnot. And now we look kind of in a modern day, looking at modern day America, where the Christian Zionism and the moving the embassy to Jerusalem and all this represents that really their scripture is correct, and it's the historical text, like Mark Huckabee wanting to change areas in like Jordan and the West Bank to Judea and Samaria in the textbooks. Wow. It's the state using the church instead of the church using the state. And it's very weird. And it's definitely a modern thing. And I know that it's happened before and whatnot, like Henry VIII formed the new church and got rid of the Catholics and whatnot. That's not what I'm talking about here. It's a distilled version of religion that they use specifically for territory claims and legal claims over land.
And people have been doing that, though, for centuries, right?
Yeah, but
it's an easy brainwashing thing when you can say God wants this.
This is different, I feel. But what are your thoughts, Lebanon, John?
Yeah, you're both right. They have been doing it for centuries, but of course, with the modern techniques, they got a PhD in this stuff. they have a whole team of PhDs on this stuff, and it's super creepy. So basically, without telling anyone, like it was Lindsey Graham speaking at that event. He's like, you know, where I grew up, we figured this crap out when I was 6 years old. Okay, what does that mean? That means he's indoctrinated into this cult since he was 6 years old. So that means
Southern Baptist.
Yeah, whenever you have the gay thoughts, you think about Israel.
Oh, wow.
Go away.
Bro, I can make some really dirty jokes with that. But you know, growing up, I had a friend who told me, you have to understand the history of the Christianity in the South, that they used to lynch Jews. And then that basically something like the Mossad or something like that actually like infiltrated their theology and actually took it over. Now, through the Schofield Bible and a lot of other plots. And there's another event which how I figured out a lot about this stuff. There's two Presbyterian churches. One Presbyterian church is like pro-Israel. One Presbyterian church is anti-Israel, and they're like the two major branches of Presbyterianism in the United States. And so the anti-Israel Presbyterian Church got in the news, where the Jewish-controlled media was smearing them in the news, saying that when they held their annual meeting to discuss theology and develop theology, that they wouldn't let the rabbis come in and tell them what's up. But all the other denominations, they do that. And they admitted this in this article. I couldn't believe it. So they literally sent rabbis.
I'm sorry to step on your point here. So you have people that come in that aren't even a part of your religion, that don't believe your religion on its face because they don't believe Jesus is the Messiah. So how could they comment on him being the fulfillment of the prophecy or any of the stuff that's really the foundation? It's what the New Testament is. So that's so crazy. It's like you're a Muslim and the Buddhists have to come in and check your homework. That's how I view that. But go ahead, Lebanon, John.
Exactly, bro. It's actually completely absurd. And there's a long history of this with way back in whatever it was, the 1600s, I think, with Martin Luther. And so when Martin Luther wanted to revise or reform away from the Catholic Church, and then the people after Martin Luther, they started to create the Protestant understanding of what books should be in the Bible, what books shouldn't be in the Bible. And he didn't know what to do because he's disconnected from hundreds of years and hundreds of miles from the Holy Land, from the Orthodox Church. He's just in a bubble of Catholicism where they had a monopoly on thought, a monopoly on religion, and it was totally corrupt, and they were making stuff up and they were abusing the people. And he knew that. And so he was trying to reform it and come up with a more true version. And I guess he was lost. And in the end, what he ended up doing was he actually asked rabbis, what should I put in the Old Testament. And so the rabbis told him not to use the Septuagint, but to use the Masoretic text, where that
Right.
prophecy about the virgin giving birth was actually modified. So actually, the Protestant Reformation at its foundation was asking Jews and rabbis what should be the accurate version of the Old Testament. So this tradition of thinking that people who reject Christ are the experts on the Old Testament, it goes back all the way to the foundation of the Protestant religion. And it's a huge mistake, because when the Romans destroyed the temple, they burned down the Hebrew scrolls, these big scrolls that they were having. And so the Hebrew people or the Jewish people or whatever it was, they had to translate from the Septuagint ancient Greek into Hebrew. So the oldest version of the Old Testament is the Septuagint, the ancient Greek one, but they don't want to tell you that. So they have this new version, this more recent version, where they've modified certain words. And that's the one that obviously Jews use. That's also what Protestants use. And it's even missing some books, or it's a long story, but basically, yeah, there's some kind of weird pattern of, and the reason why that's bad, because some people say, well, aren't Jews supposed to be the experts on the Old Testament? Well, here's the thing. The Old Testament has in it multiple persons of God. It's not a
Right.
mono.
The theophanies.
Yeah, there's a trinity of God in the Old Testament, but they don't understand that, and they don't have any explanation of that in their religion. So the Old Testament religion is not the complete revelation of the truth. And there's the whole Old Testament scripture is a massive arrow pointing to Jesus. So without Jesus, you actually can't understand the Old Testament correctly. So basically, no, the experts of the Old Testament are the Christians, not the Jews. The Jews cannot interpret the Old Testament correctly. And then there's also very specific events and worldly details in the Old Testament that specifically say that the Messiah has to come during the era of the Second Temple, which ended in 75 AD. So their claim that the Messiah is yet to come is completely inaccurate with their own scripture, right? And it's very easy to prove this. A lot of Jewish people actually know this, or when they find this out, they do start to become Christian. But there's a religious angle to all of this, and they use religion to control for this one world religion. They're going to use Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism. They're going to mold it all into one religion, and
Right.
that's why we see the Pope praying in synagogues, praying in mosques.
Do you know what's interesting about all of this is I look at this from a macro level perspective, and even outside of just the conflicts with Judaism and Christianity and all of these different things. We're talking about, text, and we're talking about books and scriptures and people who existed thousands of years ago. If one person goes in, and humans are naturally flawed, right? So we have to assume when, all the things that everybody considers as the truth, we have to consider that even the things that we base some of our assumptions off, like, oh, there's this really old text that reads exactly this way. We don't know what happened before then, or what guy came in with his specific agenda, which is why I always tell people to take just everything with a grain of salt, including when you're just looking at specific things like in a word, scripture, or religious basis, is because humans, just like today, this guy goes on national TV and says, well, if you don't like Churchill, and you're a Nazi. It's like there's people like that have their own personal agendas, and we don't know how the game of telephone happened. We're just on the other end of the line, way down the road, and it all can become one big mess of the original message. We could all be wrong. I mean, there's a case scenario that every single person that talks about every specific topic when it comes to this could have only part of the truth, and that the original source of wherever this came from, we ultimately don't know if that is the true original, because there's multiple different versions that get lost in translation.
Yeah, you have to be sharp, and you have to be able to analyze in a way that someone can't bullshit you. Basically, you have to figure that out. There's a specific process to determine these things. Like, for example, if I want to,
like if you, we believe in the Orthodox perspective.
Exactly.
Correct?
So I've debated it a lot, and people say, well, how do you know it's the original? Well, For me, it's kind of straightforward. I come from a place where we have the physical monuments that go back since the beginning. So it's kind of straightforward. Now, here in the West, it's very confusing. And there's so many different things that have happened to lead to today. But where I come from, it's very straightforward. So there's a reason why they really don't want you to know that there's such thing as an Arab Christian, right? They want you to think Arab equals Muslim. They want you to think Middle East equals Muslim. It's because me just existing, it makes you wonder, well, how did that happen? When did you guys become Christian? And well, my family's been Christian for 2,000 years. It's like, oh, wait a second. So the actual connection to the original history is it's like a thread in history that you can follow back. We have the writings from Justin Martyr from year 150. It's teaching exactly the same religion as Orthodox Christianity today. And then you got to just go back and like actually read the Old Testament. Like, for example, it actually says in the Old Testament, like, that there's multiple personhoods of God, and you can like go ask a Jew and they're just stumped. They just got no answer. So these are the kind of things that you go down this rabbit hole and you're going to find out for yourself. What you're not going to be able to get bullshitted if you dig down this rabbit hole yourself. People like me, people like Rex, people like Jay Dyer, we're not in a cult. We're not dumb. We're not naive. We've done the work. We've looked into it.
That's the thing. It's the evidence. It all lines up and it's all there. I think a lot of the times, and I really think it's because of like vampire movies and stuff, people believe that the Roman Catholic Church is the oldest and they're authoritative, and therefore everything they've done is what represents early Christianity. And they completely leave out the first 1,000 years. I mean, the schism was in what, 1054 or 1057 AD, something like that.
I'm so
right?
glad you said that. That's part of, guys, the people who are teaching you that the original church is the Western Roman Catholic Church. It's literally Jews. The Jewish people control the textbooks. It was Ghislaine Maxwell's dad who wrote the textbooks.
This is true.
Yeah, we're in the age of information, right? And that's exactly what Mark Levin is so mad about, because this is the information age, but they're losing control on information itself. And it's so funny because your dad named his organization the InfoWar, and it's literally an InfoWar. So the OG Alex Jones is forever going to be the Alex Jones in my mind. And,
Right.
he started this stuff off exactly on the right page and was exactly on target. So
not to detour, but I wanted to ask you a little bit more about yourself, John, and just kind of like, you mentioned your first generation American. That's gotta definitely make you see different perspectives of America as well as the Middle East existing in both worlds, because obviously like your parents, and I'm sure you've got a lot of family that might still be in those not your parents, but I'm saying you might have a lot of family that might still have roots to those areas. Like, what is it like from your perspective, kind of having like one foot in, one foot out on different things that happen here and internationally?
Yeah, it's super trippy. Basically, it's freaking crazy. Like, I was a little kid in Lebanon walking around on summer break from school in America, and I would wave at some kids in the playground and they would yell at me, "You are from America?" I'm like, "Yeah, hi." And they're like, "Tell George Bush, fuck you." I'm like, "Oh shit."
That's funny.
I'm like, "What the fuck?" So I started thinking like, well, why did he say that? And that's how, it all started. It's just, it was mind blowing. And then they were watching videos of the Iraq invasion, the shock and awe campaign of blowing up everything in Iraq, watching that on TV in Lebanon. Mind blowing. Seeing they're looking at it just like, wow, this is just abject evil. This is just
what was the consensus in general when they did do that whole invasion? And then you've got two narratives.
Yeah, they just see it as complete evil. They just say, wow, look at all these people they're killing for no reason. Like, this is just evil, but obviously Saddam Hussein was psycho, and I know a lot of stories about Saddam Hussein where he would shoot people and then send the bill for the bullets to the people's family. I mean, the guy was psycho. So that's why because I am religious, I have an ability to step back and say that everything is according to God's will. And so I don't get bitter and I don't get upset about the way it is, that God decides when a nation comes under judgment. Ultimately, that's what happened, and that's what continues to happen. That's how everything works. But if you don't have that religious understanding, you're going to be bitter, you're going to be upset, you're going to be, you're going to just start having hatred in your heart and getting negative and black-pilled, and that's not good. You have to accept that there's a higher power that governs everything. And why do I believe that? Well, because you got to go back to the origin of everything, consciousness itself. I can 3D print a human body. There's 3D printers that can 3D print organs, bones, veins, but you can't make it come to life. So consciousness itself, the miracle of being alive itself, originates from a creator. So that itself proves that still to this day, there's a higher power governing everything. So there's no need to be super black pilled. But yeah, man, the two worlds thing, it gave me an advantage, man. It gave me an edge because I didn't get brainwashed too much. Like me and Harrison were watching, it's really crazy stuff, man. We were in middle school. 9/11 happened. Every morning they would roll in a TV to middle schoolers and put on a kid version news show, just like a Fox News or CNN, but it was a kid version. And on that news show, it was the weirdest stuff. They were propagandizing and mentally programming us
That's crazy.
yeah, I mean, we're little kids. Why are they doing this? And then it was like a guy who didn't even look like Osama bin Laden, and they were saying this is Osama bin Laden. And I was like, hey, that's a different guy. Yeah, it was like he had a round, thick beard instead of a narrow, skinny beard. And I was like, you guys can't tell that's a different guy? They're like, no, I don't know. It's a guy with a turban, guy with a beard, same guy to me. And I'm like, oh shit, because I've seen a lot of guys with beards and a couple guys with turbans. They don't really wear turbans in Lebanon that much, but I've been exposed to the kind of like how Chinese people all look the same to us. You know what I mean? Like, the brain is not trained on these other ethnicities unless you've been around them a lot. So that allowed me to be like, hey, that's not Osama bin Laden. That's a different guy. And no one knew. No one could tell. And I was like, yeah, they're lying to you guys. And then they would say something in Arabic and put subtitles, and the subtitles were wrong. I was like, okay, guys, this is crazy. And that's when I started to realize, like, they're mentally programming us. And it was creepy. Honestly, it's creepy. Like,
and that gets you ready for the full life of like watching Mark Levin or Hannity on Fox News and being like, yes, evil. Like that makes total sense. And then from your perspective, being able to see through it day one, because you'd lived it, you'd been there, you'd seen the types of people that they were representing. You're like, hey, this is not the same guy because I know what these types of people look like and they're different. And I guess, how did this color your experience with American politics? How did it, like, your view of elections? Were you kind of in the camp very young? I wasn't in this camp. I thought it was all bought and paid for, but I believed in like people like Trump and whatnot to a certain extent. How did it color your experience of watching these elections, watching like Obama, Romney, watching Trump, Hillary, Trump, Biden, any of these elections? How did it color your opinion of it?
It definitely made me a pro-Trump guy because Trump came in and destroyed the Bush political dynasty and the Clinton political dynasty. And both of those political dynasties are directly responsible for countless deaths in the Middle East and the rise of ISIS, all kinds of bad stuff. So they're hardcore Zionists. Obama actually bombed more people than George Bush even. So
he killed American citizens. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
On the weddings.
Yeah. So I was, in 2006, a major world event happened that was censored and blocked for all Americans. And just like the famous conspiracy speech by John F. Kennedy, where he says their failures are hidden, not publicized, because 2006 involved a massive failure of the deep state and the Zionists, it's essentially erased or memory hold for Americans. So that was really crazy being part of that. But basically in 2006, Israel did a huge invasion of Lebanon to try to erase the resistance, the armed resistance against imperialism in Lebanon in 2006. And funny enough, Anthony Bourdain was filming a Open Borders or Without Borders episode of the culinary culture in Lebanon, which is very sophisticated and world class. And the war suddenly broke out while he was there, while some of my childhood friends were there. No one saw it coming. And Israel bombed the airport and all the ports and all the infrastructure of Lebanon just out of nowhere, just blew up everything in the whole country suddenly. And so Anthony Bourdain was like traumatized and shocked, just trying to film this cooking show, and everything's getting blown up. And he can't escape. They blew up the airport. They blew up everything. And it was a huge invasion, a huge war. And nobody thought that the resistance in Lebanon stood a chance. We were all kind of blaming them, like, hey, what did you guys do? Like, you guys provoked Israel and you don't really have the equipment capable of resisting them. Like, what did you guys do? We were all kind of mad at them. And then within, like, they were radio silent for the first couple of days. Everyone was pissed, like, man, what the hell did y'all do? And then the first speech, Sayed Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of the resistance in Lebanon, the first speech he gave, he came out and he said, look out into the waters at the Israeli battleship. that's destroying our infrastructure and blowing up our houses, and watch it burn. And live in his speech, when he said that, it blew up in that exact moment out in the water. And everyone was like, dude, we didn't even know you guys had missiles that could hit that boat. Like, it was like a revelation of their power. They had all the secret capabilities that we didn't even know they had. And then they ambushed the Israeli invasion like everywhere. They took so many casualties. Eventually, Israel had to withdraw and gave up. And it was all under George Bush and Condoleezza Rice. And Condoleezza Rice at that time said, these are the birth pangs of a new Middle East that we're creating. Don't worry about how bad it is. We're going to make it good one day. And it was very creepy, weird stuff. And we realized in that moment that the relationship between America and Israel is actually America actually does run Israel. I know a lot of people think that Israel runs America, but
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, America.
Right. Well, it's a tail wagging the dog is the argument people make about them having a bunch of outsized influence on us. But we literally, without our funding, our financing, our backing, our military support, they wouldn't exist.
They're flying our jets.
Right.
Exactly.
Are you kidding me? And you don't think we don't have kill switches for that? They build
100%.
stuff into these equipment, into the equipment that we sell to these other countries to basically immobilize.
Doesn't it become a thing as to where, like, the political faction which is in power now is super pro Zionist, super pro Israel, all of them, even Trump, like he loves it. And it's so intermeshed together now, where these people are inseparable and they think at least they're going to be in power forever. Do you think it could become kind of a singular organism, which is kind of how, like, you know, you see the American eagle behind Mark Levin, but it's also got the Star of David like imprinted on its neck. Do you think that there's going to be an attempt for like a true fusion between Israel and America being kind of like the same place?
You know, unfortunately, it kind of is already like that, because as
Right.
I was saying, you know, the anti-Zionist pact guys, when you go to all these towns and you go around and you see that. And again, I'm not trying to hate on Freemasons. I have friends who are Freemasons. I love everybody, but I'm just being real with you guys. I'm just going to be blunt again, because I have my
It's very creepy here in Texas. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. Look, because I got my foot in both worlds, because I have this outside perspective, I'm able to say the truth. And so the truth is, the Freemason religion, the Freemason cult or organization, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, mysticism.
It is, its function is related to Israel. Its function is related to Israel. So the people who made Israel are the same people who run and made and lead the Freemason organization. And so ultimately, that is the deep state of the United States. When people say the deep state in America is Israel, it's not Israel. It's the people who made Israel. It's the same people. And so Israel is made by the Rothschilds, and Rothschilds are openly satanic, essentially. But it's the international banking system. Like, for example, I met a guy at my job the other day. His daughter works for the World Bank. They told me that his daughter, who works for the World Bank, has diplomatic immunity license plates. You only get that if you represent a country as the emissary or ambassador or consul, whatever. You're representing some country. Why would the World Bank have diplomatic immunity license plates, right? So what country does that represent? So I asked them, where's the headquarters of the World Bank? Is it in Brussels or something? He said, no, it's in Washington, D.C. So all these countries in the world that get a loan, their whole country puts the population and their potential as the collateral for the loan. The country's natural resources, the population itself, the population's potential, the country itself is the collateral for the loan. They sell it out to the World Bank, which is headquarters in Washington, D.C. So the deep state is behind Israel. It's the foundation of Israel. It's underneath everything in America. So it's what we're doing right now in this country, that we're exposing them, and we're trying to uproot them, and we're trying to undo their power here in the United States. They knew and they know that that was happening and that that's coming. That's exactly why they're transferring over to Asia. So America, unfortunately, guys, when we achieve our goal of kicking out this evil deep state, they're just going to cut America off, and America will be on the shit list, just like North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba. Obviously, America is a giant country and could self-sustain, but that ultimately they're going to make America isolated internationally. Which
where does the power base move?
China 100%. Okay. If you look at the foundation, Mao Zedong, if you look at who was around and behind Mao Zedong, it's the craziest thing. You're literally not going to believe it till you see it with your own eyes. It's literally like, and here's Mr. Blumenstein hanging out with Xi Jinping, and here's Mr. Goldstein hanging out with Xi Jinping, and these kind of Asian names. And then these super Zionist Ashkenazi names, they are behind Mao Zedong. And I'm not making this up. I know it sounds ridiculous. You gotta see for your own eyes. They built up Mao Zedong. And then the transfer of technology to China literally happened through Israel. Western technology.
Yes, I was gonna say something about this. You talk about the military technology and how we have kill switches in it. I saw John Kiriakou talk about this. The Israelis, they wanted some fighter jet that we had. We said, okay, we kind of toned down the specs on it a little bit. They're like, no, we need the real thing. We send them the real thing. They just give it to China.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more with missiles, and I'm sure Lebanon John can speak to that. But I just want to throw that in there.
It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's honestly, guys, it's the villagers. I'm just FYI, just FYI. The villagers of Lebanon have to fight against this stuff head to head. It's nightmarish, actually. In the last war that just ended, the state of Lebanon is totally bankrupt and neutered because they don't want it to be able to resist Israel. So they intentionally make it really bad. And so they told the citizens of Lebanon, you just have to be bullied and just accept it. And you just have to be dispossessed, displaced. Occupied South Lebanon was occupied by Israel for 18 years. They were making it into Palestine 2.0. They were just kicking them out, and they were Judaizing South Lebanon. That's their word. I know it sounds really silly. They said we're Judaizing South Lebanon, and they're just going to occupy it and spread it for the Greater Israel Project. And then the citizens of South Lebanon created the resistance, and after 18 years of guerrilla warfare, kicked Israel out. And then in year 2006, they reinvaded and failed. And then immediately after the head-to-head invasion failed, they initiated Plan B, where they, in 2007, the next year, they took out Gaddafi. They took Gaddafi's state weapons from Libya, transferred them to Turkey, and armed ISIS through Turkey, with ISIS's main goal being to jihad, with a fatwa from the Grand Mufti in Saudi Arabia and Mecca, to jihad against the resistance against Israel. And so the war in 2006 is the turning point in the Middle East where Western imperialism, it's the inflection point. Pre-2006, they could do whatever they wanted. They could bully anyone. No one could stand up to them. They were just bullying people to no end, and no one could ever beat them. Then in 2006, when the civilians of South Lebanon survived a head-to-head invasion and actually won, everything post-2006, Western influence in the Middle East has been on a steep decline. And I do not advocate for, I'm not happy that the United States is losing influence. I want the United States to enforce international law, win the hearts and minds of the people, and maintain dominant position. But they're not. The United States is not. Right. The United States is being a bad guy in the Middle East, and so that's why its influence has been declining like crazy. And it's all because of this war in 2006. And then that's why ISIS started. That's why they made ISIS. And the guy, the NATO general, what's his name? The guy who said 7 countries in
Wesley Clark.
Wesley Clark goes on CNN and word for word says, we made ISIS with our allies in the region because if you need someone who will fight to the death against Hezbollah, you have to go after these religious zealots who are like Frankensteins. So this ISIS,
we can't control them anymore.
Exactly.
And then we freak out because the regime change didn't work, and this gets me thinking now that you're talking about these things. It's like, imagine a scenario. Let's say United States doesn't police the world. Let's say, there wasn't a certain amount of greed. And, let's say the Middle East was left to, have their own internal conflicts, like Sunnis, Shiite type of things going on where they're battling each other. And, the thing is, do you think that scenario works where you have like totally hands off, or do you think there's been so much animosity and things that we've gone and messed up that we have to still exert power just in case somebody goes and decides to do another 9/11 without us watching?
And really quickly, I mean, just to tag on to Tim's point here about what you think about that, like I believe it would have been a much more secular Middle East. Like we've religiousized everything there through our funding of the Wahhabis, essentially. But what do you think, Lebanon John?
That's crazy that you say that. I just stumbled upon a video yesterday. I posted it on my X. It's a dailymotion.com link. It's a video that probably you can't find on YouTube or anywhere else. And it's a senator, United States senator, saying that Hillary Clinton, her policy was to destroy every single non-religious government in the Middle East. Exactly what you just said.
Yep.
So yeah. So now, I don't think 9/11 was actually done by Muslims, because I think that if there were psychotic Muslims who wanted to do terrorist attacks, I think that there's ample opportunity to hit soft targets all over the place. Now in Europe, but here's the thing: I've been to Europe. I want to explain something. Okay. So so after 2006, there's this new era, this era of ISIS versus the resistance. That lasted a long time. We call that the Syrian Civil War, or whatever you want to call it, ISIS, ISIL, all this stuff. That time period, it was a long time, let's say 8 years. I went to Europe, and I was in Europe during that time period, and I saw everything firsthand, a lot of crazy stuff. And I can tell you that the Muslims that they're letting into Europe are intentionally the ISIS kind. And the anti-ISIS kind, they don't want to let them in, because the anti-ISIS kind is the resistance against Israel kind. And that's the Muslims they don't like. So the Hezbollah kind, they don't want those guys. So I specifically went to Amsterdam, where weed is legal, hash is legal, totally legal. And it was like a goal of mine for years to go to Amsterdam and get the best hash in the world, which is Lebanese blonde hash. Everyone talks about it. It was like this really hyped up thing. I made a whole like plan to go there and try this Lebanese blonde hash. Well, when I got there, there was no Lebanese hash anywhere. And I was like, guys, weed is legal. What is going on here? Why is there no Lebanese hash? And they told me that they specifically attacked the Lebanese community because they said all the Lebanese hash that was sold was funding the resistance against ISIS and the resistance against Israel. And they know that. And the European deep state intentionally uprooted the entire supply chain and market and deported all these Lebanese people who were anti-ISIS. But then walking down the street, I locked eyes with a guy who was clearly a terrorist, the cartoon version of a terrorist, walking free in Europe, free on the streets. He looked at me and immediately knew that I knew what he was about, because I'm a Middle Eastern guy with a full beard. I look like a Hezbollah guy because Hezbollah guys have a full beard. These ISIS guys shave their mustache and have long, skinny beards. So he looked at me and I looked at him like, whoa, that's a terrorist. I know that guy's an ISIS supporter. You can tell. And then he looked at me like, oh, man. And then he quickly shuffled away. And he went into a shady little doorway with Islamic writing over the doorway. And it was a hallway that goes behind the falafel store, which is the storefront, into these hidden rooms behind the falafel store. And all this funding, all these mosques where they radical. There was thousands of guys from Europe that were radicalized in Saudi-funded mosques and sent to jihad against the Syrian government, against the resistance, against Lebanon and Syria. And so Europe was completely complicit and completely cooperative in this massive agenda to create ISIS, to fund ISIS. Europe and Saudi Arabia, they're completely part of this. So you can't think in terms of like Islamic versus not Islamic. The worst Islamics are literally servants of the West. Since the 2006,
right? Because we love being able to plug into their theology and use them essentially as a wind up.
I was just say, I think it also comes down. You always need to have an enemy in order to control too. My thing with where I was going with the question was, you have like Hamas, for example. They've got a doctrine that's out there that people can go and read, and they essentially say we have to eradicate this entire region because there shouldn't be any Jews and this land belongs to us, and we won't stop until all these people are dead. Like there's extremist groups that exist like that, right? And I'm just trying to see if there's a scenario where we can ever get hands off in the Middle East without there being like a conflict that breaks out.
Well,
like
the Israelis
here.
proved them right. That's what I would say to that. Is the Israelis proved Hamas right? They proved that like they want genocidal war. Well, they want genocidal war. That's all the people.
Yeah, but like I also have made this argument where Israel is much more tolerant in terms of their perspective. Yes, they took it far. They took it too far this
polling,
time.
though.
Yeah, I know.
Tolerant
but I'm saying tolerant in the sense that like, okay, Gaza could exist just like the West Bank. You can have the semantics of saying, well, it doesn't really. I know. I knew you were going that way, but I'm just saying, like, you can have the scenario where like Israel will allow there to be a two-state solution. But if like
Will they?
Hamas, but if Hamas was in the power of Israel, their doctrine literally says we would just eradicate them. I know what Israel is doing now, but I'm saying take the 10,000-foot
Yeah.
view and step back
Okay.
from before
What are
all
your
this
thoughts
let
on
me
this,
answer.
Lebanon, John?
Okay, yeah. So you bring up an excellent point, and the key part of history that you got to understand is that there were thousands and thousands of Middle Eastern or like Arabic Jews in Lebanon, in Syria, in Palestine before 1948, and they were totally living in peace and no one bothered them. And if you're an Arab Jew, you're still not treated with equal rights as a Ashkenazi European Jew, even in Israel.
Yep.
But here's the thing: Hamas came into power specifically through support of Israel. So Israel is fulfilling the hatred and giving them ammunition for that hatred. If you rewind the clock, there was no hatred, and there was plenty of Jews. Like right now with the new government in Syria, there's Jews now in Syria. They went right back. Not only that, but there's millions of Jews who live in peace in Iran. So the Iranian government wouldn't support Hamas killing all the Jews. This current Syrian government wouldn't support Hamas killing all the Jews. And Hamas is not going to be the Palestinian government. They might be a component of the Palestinian government, but they're not going to be the Palestinian government. The
I
Palestinian
agree with
government.
that.
Yeah, and so they might advocate for some crazy stuff, but I doubt they're really going to be able to pull that off. Now, the truth is that Middle Easterners are generally just interested in family stuff, and they're just interested in like kind of lazy stuff. Like Iran has never initiated an offensive attack on another country like in a super long time. And then,
What about the proxy stuff though?
well, the proxy stuff would be so when I told you South Lebanon was occupied for 18 years and then they did a guerrilla war to liberate their land, all those weapons were gifts from Iran. So when they
And
tell
that's
you,
why they call them the state sponsors, because
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. They
that's
go
not
under the
terrorism.
guise of saying that we
Well,
don't commit crimes, but we just fund the groups.
I mean, I would argue they're in the right to do that.
No, they
Like,
are. It's international
I would
law
make that argument. Yeah.
when a foreign invader comes into your land, you are legally permitted to use any means necessary to liberate your land. That is
That's the
by
Ukraine
definition.
argument.
Well,
That's
it is the black and white letter of the law. So that is not terrorism. Now whether sometimes they went too far or not, of course. I mean, when someone steals your home, you're not going to expect them to like just have 100% perfection on their track record. But then again, if you compare all these armed groups, Hezbollah's track record is let's say 80% good. It's not that bad. Like for example, Hezbollah protected a lot of churches in Syria when ISIS was killing all the churches, killing all the Christians and closing all the churches. Hezbollah was saving the Christians. So all in all, you do need radicals to fight to the death. That's literally what Wesley Clark was saying. And they use these radicals to wind them up, just like with the Azov battalion who think they're serving Hitler, working for Zelensky, who's Jewish. It's very silly. It doesn't make any sense, but they need them to be riled up to fight to the death. You have to feed guys some kind of line of bullshit. So it's usually the radicals that are prominent during time of war. But during time of peace, if there's total peace, Hamas would lose popularity. If there was total peace, there was no atrocities, there'd be no need for Hamas. Anyway, Israel funded Hamas originally to erase a more moderate governance in Gaza. So what you're saying is right, that's a strange, that the Hamas charter saying to kill all the Jews, that's strange. Why is that strange? Because Palestine, the original society and civilization, had Jews in it. So how can you say I'm fighting for the nation of Palestine when there was a bunch of Palestinian Jews? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it was a minority, right? Back then, before the Europeans moved over into the Palestine area. I mean, it was predominantly, you go back, yes, you can go back 3,000 years ago and say, well, okay, well, it was really controlled by, the Jewish people in Old Jerusalem and X, Y, and Z. And then the Romans come in, take it. You've got like different groups that come in the Ottoman Empire. I mean, it's that area has changed interchangeably over and over again. But like my whole thing with this entire thing is I think some Americans don't realize that, a lot of the Muslims don't like these radical jihadist and terrorist groups themselves. I think it might just be one of those situations where you've got the megaphone of somebody created this negative feedback loop to where these groups exist, they commit some kind of atrocity, and then it gives, you know, these Western societies the ability to go in there and do whatever they want for resource extraction or whatever it is. But can you clarify if, you know, ultimately, and this is what I think I've seen, is the people in the region of the Middle East, majority of them just want peace and to be just left alone. This is a correct statement, or am I like, I don't see why this wouldn't be the scenario.
Yeah, it definitely is the case. And people who don't want to believe that, they would say, but doesn't it say in the Quran that they have to do this and that? Well, here's the thing. They don't follow the Quran that well. They're more
That's
interested
the part that I was trying to understand. Yes, because I've heard my friend argue this, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, the Quran is pretty crazy in what Muhammad did, and the 16-year-olds and the sleeping with the underage women and stuff like that. Like, there's been some crazy stuff, but just like you're saying, Christians don't follow all the religion like it was back then. Not all Muslims practice that version of the Quran, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly. Like the Quran commands Muslims to wage war, jihad, you know, to the death against polytheists. Now, when was the last time you saw a Muslim, you know, give a shit about Hinduism? They don't give a shit, dude. They're busy living their lives. 99.99%. They don't have the motivation or the religious zeal to even follow their own religion that closely. Now, here in America, we've got some pretty radical Muslims, but
Yes.
you do have to stand up to these people. Like, okay, let me explain something very important. When Islam takes over past a certain percentage of the population, they then want to completely take over the governance because they believe that that's good. They believe that they're serving God with that strategy. But here's the thing: everybody forgets and everyone neglects the story of Lebanon. Lebanon does not have an Islamic government. Lebanon does not have Sharia law. Lebanon has a secular republic government, even though it's majority Muslim. Now, it's in the rules for a Sunni Muslim, it's in the rules that they are not supposed to be governed by a non-Sunni Muslim, that it's not a legit government, that they essentially have to endlessly take action to overthrow the government until it is a Sunni Muslim government. And so that's the standard teaching of all Sunni Muslims everywhere in the world. But when they interviewed on video, this video always makes me laugh. They interviewed a Sunni Muslim in Lebanon and said, "Are you advocating for a Sunni Muslim Sharia law government in Lebanon?" They started literally looking over their shoulders. It was like, no, we don't advocate for that in Lebanon because we'll kill them. So you do have to stand up for yourself, and you do have to have weapons. And if you know, nature abhors a vacuum. If Christians and non-Muslims are literally going to just sit back and not do anything, then Muslims are going to take over, because you can't just do nothing. You can't just
When you look at Syria, a place with a largely secular government, whatever you have to say about Assad or whatnot, we go in there, we say, hey, Assad, really evil guy, really bad. We put in the ISIS leader, right? We put in al-Julani, and
a butcher.
And he goes on fatwas himself, and he's got, you know, a loose coalition of people. It's over like 300 cells that he controls, and most of them don't even speak Arabic. I believe I was hearing Glenn Greenwald or someone else talk about this and break it down. I trust the source wherever I heard it from. Basically, our State Department, our CIA, were in there helping him run his coalition of people. And as long as, you know, they give Israel the Golan Heights, or they do any number of things that are beneficial to the state, he's got free reign to do anything he wants, because they can trust him. They can trust his motivations. They know what he wants to do. They know it's aligned with their goals, and that's what they support. They look at a secular state, look at a place like Lebanon or Syria, and they go, hey, like, we can't use this, so we got to get rid of what's there.
Exactly.
Right?
If they have a problem in Syria, they got to make one phone call. They call one guy, problem solved. It's a lot less headache for them. If you got a problem in Lebanon, good luck. I mean, there's all kinds of politics and stuff. It's a real thriving democratic country with actual votes, actual political campaigns, fighting for people's votes. There's not any way to get anything pushed through an actual thriving, civic engaged democratic country. Now, with bless you, al-Julani, you make one phone call, you can get whatever you want done. So yeah, and what's happening right now in Lebanon is they're trying to pressure the U.S. funded government to forcibly disarm the resistance, which Israel couldn't do in multiple wars. So what Israel could not achieve through war, they're trying to politically achieve by creating this looming threat of a civil war, because they already had a civil war in Lebanon where hundreds of thousands of people died and the government collapsed, and then Israel invaded. to occupy Lebanon after essentially triggering the civil war. They are doing the same playbook again, and they're trying to
Always happens.
and so the government of Lebanon is stuck between a rock and a hard place where their salary literally comes from the United States. The sanctions will be lifted if they cooperate with the United States. A bailout will be given if they cooperate with the United States, or they're going to starve to death in total isolation and siege. So they're trying to, and so basically they're saying, if you guys don't submit to us, we could bring Jolani from Syria and just swallow up Lebanon whole, and then Lebanon will be governed by this Islamic, hardcore Islamic government that will oppress the Christians. And so it's another moment in time where Hezbollah's existence is actually giving the Christians protection again, because the only thing stopping Jolani is Hezbollah. So the guys in Hezbollah now have to face the drones, the jets, the satellites of the collective Western technology, finding them, finding their weapons, tracking everything they do, the cell phones, the pagers, everything you can think of. Israeli invasion with all these tanks and infantry, and then combined with a huge terrorist army invading on the other side from Syria. And Lebanon now is completely surrounded, and they could invade with terrorists, like you said, who don't even speak Arabic, all the way from Dagestan and Chechnya and Turkmenistan, all Central Asian Sunni Muslims who are all brainwashed in Saudi-funded mosques that they should kill all the Christians, they should kill all the Shiites. And they don't want a jihad against Israel, though. They just want a jihad against the enemies of Israel. So it's a really tough spot right now for Lebanon, and it could be a very crazy battle in the near future. Right now, Israel is settled down the war in Gaza, and now they're drawing their attention to Lebanon. They're saying that they're
I think that starts back up, even though they have that little peace agreement that lasted where they created that little buffer zone. But I think they go back. But I'm so confused at the end of the day with this whole thing. Like I'm just sick of all of the new enemies. We had, Al Qaeda, then we had ISIS. Now we're talking about Hezbollah. We're talking about Hamas. Like at some point, I'm like, dude, the average American doesn't really give a shit what's going on in the Middle East and just says, hey, just let them do whatever they're going to do. And we don't have any reason. The only reason why there were people that were supporting, these invasions or supporting, intervention or having like military assets is because they're creating this fear around the fact that like, oh, we need to get that under control because we can't let these terrorist groups essentially like form an entity and grow bigger and bigger without us intervening. And so it comes down to safety is what the average American is thinking. It's like, I don't want to, have my kids be subjected to some terrorist attack. So I'm like, what is the solution here? Well, how do we get out of this freaking negative feedback loop? Because at the end of the day, yes, you said something about the fact that like the Muslims are going in who practice, that version of the Quran. Those ones are not so good, but like the silent majority that probably aren't as radical, they just want to be just like the Americans and just left alone, and they don't have any major issues. Like Iran, I've seen, videos of people on the boots in the ground. They're like, hey, we actually kind of like America. It's just the politics that are the politicians
it's so insane.
Are fighting each other.
And it pisses me off too. It really makes me mad because there are all these cool countries. There are these places I'd love to visit.
Yeah.
If it was another political environment, if it was another time, there are all these places across the globe. And I point out Russia as an example of this. Like they're willing to work with us, but we declare you the enemy. We say that you're bad, and then we go to war with you. So then you have to fight back against us. And then by fighting back against us, you become bad. And it's just this giant mess, and it never seems to stop. And you get people like Lindsay in that clip that we played just crowing and crooning about the amount of munitions that have been able to been dropped on all these countries. Now, that's what they're proud of. They're proud of the death. They love it. That's their religion.
Turn it into a parking lot.
Well, it's a weird like signaling of strength. It comes from weakness, I feel.
Oh man, that was horrible. He said we ran out of bombs, and I said, my mind was blown. I said, hold on a second, Mr. Graham. Are you telling me that you're happy that we ran out of bombs? Like you got to be really dumb to think that us running out of bombs.
Right. Our munitions are low. It's incredible. We've killed so many people with them. Like, but that's the thing is it's all wrapped up in the industry. They want the munitions to be depleted, so they have to order more. Right.
Yeah, I don't
What do you think
like
the solution is, John?
The solution is to uproot this cult that runs this country here, because they are not going to leave the Middle East alone because it's part of their cult ideology. That's why they won't leave the Middle East alone. As soon as they leave the Middle East alone, the Middle East will resolve its own problems very rapidly. So
You don't think that there'll be those fractions that go out and try to, like, do something dramatic? I know 9/11, everyone's saying, is an inside job, but let's say like the equivalency of that. Like, you think like if we leave it alone, those things would not happen, where like they try to get the revenge for what Israel did? Because I mean, frankly, everything that's happening in Palestine, there's a lot of angry people that, I'm afraid, like, what happens there?
Yeah, but they're just for them, other than the psychos, which there's psychos in every group, but I mean the psychos of the Middle East are being created intentionally to be used as tools. But if they stop that, if they stop Saudi Arabia from funding radical Islam and brainwashing these people, the average Middle Easterner, the actual culture of the Middle East, is a family-oriented culture, and they don't want to hurt random Americans. They don't have that ideology. They don't think that hurting a random American is going to push their country to be better. That makes no sense, right? So you can't convince some random person in the Middle East, like, if you just hurt citizens in America, it's going to achieve some goal. They're not dumb. I mean, it just achieves no goal, right? So,
but that's always been their goal, right? Is to make the population feel like that. That's always been their goal.
Yeah, the Middle Easterners they use fear to make you scared of Middle Easterners in general. It's actually kind of funny because obviously I've experienced that. In middle school, I even had my teachers calling me Osama bin Laden. I look nothing like that, obviously, but it's just goofy.
That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, the brainwashing is on a whole nother level. The day after September 11th, I don't know what, I was in like 6th, 7th grade or something. The day after September 11th, a kid in my class actually told me, this would be September 12th, "Are you proud of what your people did?" I was just like, "My people? Like, I'm from Lebanon. Like, I'm not from Afghanistan." Like, I didn't even know what to tell the guy. You know what I mean? Because they actually put everyone from Lebanon all the way to Afghanistan in one singular group. And that's like 7 or 8 different countries all put together in one group as like one particular ethnicity. And
That's the American understanding, isn't it?
But it reminds me of like the same thing that happens. Like, how like there's the running joke on the internet, like Indian smell, right? But like, if you were to actually go and see like the demographic of, the brown people who are like the ones that quote unquote smell because they don't use deodorant because it has certain products in it that they don't use, it's actually like the, some of the Pakistanis and some of the other ethnics that are all in the same region, but because they all look the same, they get lumped together. So like all the Hindus that actually shower, that smell good and like do their proper hygiene, get lumped under the same, guise of that small population that is doing the, quote unquote, they smell thing.
Yeah, 100%.
And so it's that thing because Americans can't tell the difference.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, 100%. I know, man. It's education is going to be a big role in that. But basically, the solution is that okay, here's the thing: if America can't be on the right side in the Middle East, then the solution is to leave the Middle East. But I don't like advocating for the United States to abandon the Middle East. That is not good for the United States.
Why is that?
Well, the Middle East is actually the most important geopolitical junction in the world because it's the connection of Africa, Asia, and Europe, and it all goes through the Middle East. So America abandoning the Middle East is a loss for American influence and projection of power. It undoubtedly is. It's just American power is being used for evil ends, and because of that, that's why the influence has declined.
But why do we need American power? That's the part I'm trying to understand. Like, our way is great for what we feel like as Americans, but how do I say that like the American way is the right way for somebody who has a completely different upbringing? I mean, isn't that part of the issue in the first place?
I think he means influence in the region.
But what level of influence? I'm trying to understand.
So the part that we haven't mentioned is that other imperial powers are just going to swoop right in, specifically like China and other stuff like that. So it's not like the Middle East is ever going to be completely left alone because all these major powers actually budget like billions and billions of dollars on the Middle East. So the solution is for the United States to be on the right side and to be like, for example, there was that that wrestling WWE or whatever guy, his theme song was, I am a real American. I fight for
Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan. He's like, I'm a real American. I fight for the right of every man. So the real essence of American culture that we can be proud of is for America to stand up for the rights of every man. And we can get behind that. And the Middle East would like that. The Middle East would welcome the United States to actually stand up for the rights of every man. But there's these, that's not actually what happened. When they took over Iraq and they made this Iraq state military, then they had Blackwater go in and put bombs in the different mosques to make the people start fighting each other. And they then created ISIS, and the Iraqi state military was that the United States funded and armed was ordered to stand down, gave ISIS all their weapons, and the United States wouldn't bomb ISIS. So,
Right.
you know, it's if America, if we took over the government and we took over the deep state, like right now, we would essentially sanction Israel until they gave Palestinians equal rights. Same thing with Syria. We would make the Syrians stop oppressing minorities. We would force every country in the world, for every country in the Middle East to honor the human rights of minorities. And that would actually be a good thing. So I do support American influence and American being this like big daddy of the world. I actually do want that to happen, but they didn't actually do it. They didn't actually do that.
Right.
So
I
yeah,
think you have to do it in a blend, though. You have to do it in a way that works for both the local people, but then also has the good parts of America, not just all the American
It's
way.
what we represent, and then we are the antithesis of what we represent. And in practice, America, we make all these promises, then we do kind of the complete opposite. Lebanon, John, it's been phenomenal to have you on tonight. We really appreciate you coming on, especially at such short notice. I know I messaged you today. We had a great time, and we hope that you'll come back on again. And we hope that we could do Moonbase sometime too.
oh yeah, you guys are always welcome. Yeah, you guys. This is one of the smartest conversations I've ever had. Y'all are really on point. The youth are much smarter than the older people. Let me tell you.
Well, I mean, it's all there. That's the thing about being in the age of the internet and whatnot is you can see all these people talking. You can see the historical documents.
ChatGPT gives
Yeah.
you all the
You
information
just ask
you need.
it about these things and it'll tell you. And the way it's all set up is really for a universe of boomers who are still watching the TV, not for the information age where everything's available. So thank you, man. I really appreciate you being on here tonight, and we hope we can do it again soon.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you, Lebanon John. That was Lebanon John. Follow him on X. He's a phenomenal guy. Very interesting, very unique perspective on what's going on right now in the Middle East because he's from there. He's lived it. Also, dual citizen, United States, Lebanon. He's been
Nice
here.
to hear somebody who's actually from the region that actually understands the nuances of what the Muslim people want.
Yes, I agree with just Arab people in general. We're going to go ahead and do the history segment now. We're going to learn some important stuff about the Civil War. And
Civil War, this
Reconstruction.
is what everybody was asking for earlier. So
Take a small break here.
Yeah,
We'll
don't
be
go
right back.
anywhere. We'll be right back.
Yes, we'll rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We will rally from the hillside, we'll gather from the plain, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah!
Howdy, y'all. Oh, we got a malfunction here. I gotta plug this thing in.
Look at the dog cam. Look at Rupert. Sit. Do down. Downtime. Do downtime.
He's not listening.
Do downtime, Mr. Rupert.
Look, Confederate was the only thing I could find tonight.
That's funny.
So we on the Confederate side tonight. And Proud Boys. All right, so Civil War, guys. I know this was asked about. We're gonna do actually a pretty good breakdown of this. This one's gonna be an interesting segment because I actually did do some deep diving. We were looking into all of the aspects. So we're gonna do a little pre-war, during the war, and then post-war, and then that'll sum everything up. But these are the things that we sometimes forget about in history. But the Civil War is one of those things that is something that defined the United States ultimately. And it's one of the reasons why I'm sitting in a room with this fellow over here in the first place. So I have to say it was something that was welcomed potentially, even though a lot of people died. So let's look at this first map here. It's going to be talking about what it looked like during this time period. So you've got the split, right? You've got the North and then you've got the South. So the North, of course, was the Union, and you talk about the industrial. They had railroads, they had factories, they had labor that would place manpower. And then you had the South, which was just agriculture based. You got cotton, you've got tobacco, you've got sugar, and it was all, enslaved power that was running that. And so the issue is at this point, before we do this whole expansion, the balance was pretty even in terms of, number of free states versus number of slave states. And that was the thing. The North naturally became more, anti-slavery just by the fact of like they had, machinery and capability. And then you also had a lot of immigrants that were coming from, their prospective countries that were moving to these regions. So it widely remained considered free. But the problem is we have this thing called manifest destiny. And manifest destiny is, the aspect of we need to expand, guys. We don't just like west. Yeah, we need to go west. We don't just like this little area that we've colonized up to this point. We want it all, So if you can see in the map right there, that's how much we owned. And now that part of Texas is somewhere where there was a lot of there were Americans that were living in that region, but there was a claim. They were like, hey, we want you to annex us, essentially. And so the president at the time, James K. Polk, he saw as a reason like, hey, you know what, let's go buy Mexico. So he goes and talks that yellow region all the way through California, including that little green part. Dude, that's owned by Mexico, guys. They had so much land compared to what they have today. But we offered them $30 million, which is about $1.2 billion in today's amount of money. And the Mexicans basically refused. And Rex, do you know what happens when people refuse what daddy wants?
Big war. Yeah. I mean, I would argue this is a good thing.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Daddy said
I like the US. So go US, we invade Mexico. Big boom.
So yeah, I mean, daddy says, hey, we're gonna go and put up these troops that are going to be stationed along the border there that you can see in the green. And essentially they bait the Mexicans into a war, and they essentially get them to like basically start shooting at them first in order to claim, oh, you guys attacked us, now we can go and destroy you guys. So let's look at the second map now. Yeah. This map is going to show you what it looks like after. Oh, this is the thing that we should talk about as well. But
go to another one.
The Missouri Compromise. No, this is fine. This is fine. The one thing that I forgot to mention is that one of the big reasons before we even start talking about this whole expansion of having new states, each time a state is added, it became very difficult to determine whether that new state was going to be a free state or slave state.
They'd
And
make a free one, they'd make a slave one, they'd make a free one, they'd make a slave one.
yes, but it wasn't that simple because all the occupied territories are happening at different points and there's always an imbalance. But basically what they did was they did this thing called the Missouri Compromise line, where they said, all right, from this line below, you can have everything be slave. And then anything north of that becomes it becomes free, essentially. And so we basically took over. When we took over Mexico, we created these regions. And I think we can go to the next.
I got it. Just asked me to do it.
Nope. Go back. It's not in order like that. So,
all right, it's no problem. Which one are you trying to go to? And we'll go to it.
all right, go to 3.
Yeah, it's in order.
All right. So take a look at this, guys. This is basically when we went to war with Mexico, we said we want it all. So we took over all of these regions, New Mexico territory, Texas, and you just see how much land we took. It was like basically we cut Mexico in half. So that being said, California became a free state by consequence, as well as some of these other regions. Even though it's not split evenly, this is what ended up happening. But these compromises were only doing but so much, guys. I mean, they weren't the thing that was going to keep America intact because, you know, at the end of the day, there was other things that were happening. So what's not on this map that you can't see, they've got Kansas. Kansas is a region that ends up having
it's all in the unorganized.
It's all in the unorganized territory, but eventually it does become organized by the 50s.
Kansas
okay?
becomes a slave state. It upsets the balance of everything.
Yeah, so Kansas becomes a slave state, but you had what they call bleeding Kansas, where you had a bunch of these free people and northerners basically moving into those regions, trying to like disrupt the balance of power and trying to make this whole mixing pot. So you had a lot of like free people, we don't want slavery, and then anti-slavery and slavery people that were all in the same melting pot. And there was like, you know, basically a mini civil war where people were fighting against each other over the politics that were happening down there.
Right.
So this actually leads us to our breaking point. Let's pull up the map of the 1960 election.
Okay, I'll pull that up. Talk about it.
1960 election is when Lincoln gets
1860.
I mean, sorry, let's say 1860.
You're
Yeah.
fine.
1860 is when Lincoln comes into power. And this is a very big deal, guys. This is Abe Lincoln at the time. He's a poor farm boy, or he used to be. I mean, he was in the Senate.
He was a
lawyer, but
Yeah.
his upbringing was that poor farm boy who turned a lawyer and who saw slavery as both immoral and unfair competition. Because here's the thing. Free men couldn't compete with enslaved labor.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're gonna
Working 24/7.
yeah, you're working
Yeah.
for free versus trying to go in there and make a livable wage, it becomes an imbalance. You know, similar things that we have with immigration, how we have conflicts with that. But you know, his standpoint was like, hey, I'm going to promise that there's going to be no new slave states. And, you know, the South heard this as a death sentence, but you can see how he won, you know, the popular vote. But the thing is the North in these free states completely outnumber the South. I mean, it's the population is like 22 million compared to like 9 million in the South, right? So it was inevitable for him to win that. And as soon as he wins in 1960, this is the turning point. This is when South Carolina succeeds. And then they sit there and they claim and they say, you know what, this is a hostility to slavery. And so it's going to destroy. They basically said, okay, we're going to destroy the
business. Yeah,
exactly. We know what Lincoln's about. We don't like it. And then within that time frame of South Carolina being the first one, 10 other states basically went in and declared also the same thing. And they became the Confederate States of America, led by Jefferson Davis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at the next map. And this is going to show kind of the divide on how it happened. Number 6 there. And
I got it.
Basically with this map, it's going to show you kind of the contrast on which states were free and which states succeeded. But basically, you can see all those southern
Virginia,
states.
North Carolina, South Carolina,
Yep.
Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, LA,
LA.
Louisiana. Yeah, the state of LA. It's actually right next to Texas. And then the state of Texas, of course. And Texas is actually the last place for slavery to be ended. That's why Juneteenth is celebrated when it is. That's the date that the slaves were freed here. But go ahead. Tim?
So, I mean, people are going to lead you to believe, there is this lost cause. There is a narrative that goes out that says, the Civil War, it really wasn't about slavery. It was about our rights. It was about
trade.
It was about trade. It was about, freedom of what we can do and not letting the government tell us what we can do. But here's the thing with that, guys. I really did a deep dive just to make sure that this wasn't, some hidden war that we got wrong. Don't be fooled. Whatever you're reading out there is false. This was totally about slavery, right? The thing is after the war, there was a man that came out with a book. And essentially he said in that book, as well as a lot of these other southern states, they wanted to redefine the narrative of what happened during that time period. That way they could say, this is actually what happened. And they had a whole propaganda campaign to basically push this narrative as well. So here's the thing. These were statements that the southern states said themselves. Mississippi said, our position is thoroughly identified within the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest in the world. That was what Mississippi said during that time period. And this is before the war, right? Alexander Stevens, who's a Confederate VP. Our new government is founded upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man.
It's not a bad southern accent.
That is slavery in this natural and normal condition. Okay, this was a slavery issue. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. This is.
Yeah, they didn't want people taking their farm equipment, basically. Like that's
long story
that's
short.
The way it is. That's the way it is.
Hey, look, I can't hate on that. That this is true. This is the truth. So this really cues up, the states succeeding at that point. Lincoln didn't like this.
But it's about my southern rights. The South shall rise again.
Right.
I agree with you.
The white,
like it's very clearly about slavery. But what slide do you want next?
So Lincoln didn't like this, and we're actually going to watch a little video that shows how this kicked off. Essentially,
Fort Sumter.
Yeah. Okay. So Fort Sumter.
We think of Fort Sumter. We think about the opening.
I got it.
Fort Sumter is where the Civil War officially kicks off, guys. Okay. Essentially, after South Carolina succeeds and all the rest of them follow, there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of conflict and disagreements. And Lincoln essentially says, we don't recognize you guys, but we still have at the time, the Union obviously still has, before it's really the Union, still has assets and they have bases and they have different regions that are in the South. And as the South,
we're our own country.
Yeah. So as the South succeeds, they're like, oh, well, these bases and these pieces of land are ours.
Right.
So this is where Fort Sumter comes in, and let's go ahead and watch this clip because this is how it all kicks off.
Right. Oh, beautiful! I'm about to destroy everything in the studio. Here we go. White man.
We think of Fort Sumter, we think about the opening of the Civil War, the first shots fired. This is a fortification in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina. And on April 12th, 1861, a bombardment began that did initiate the conflict between the Union and the new Confederate States. But really, this story does begin with the secession crisis. Secession starts in December of 1860 in South Carolina. It's a response to Lincoln's election. The Republicans taking power scares a lot of the slaveholding interests in the South. Ultimately, 7 states will form the Confederacy in early 1861, and they will threaten federal fortifications in different harbors across the Atlantic coast and into the Gulf Coast. Harbors like Charleston, South Carolina, where there are federal fortifications and federal troops. Some say they can't hold the forts in the harbor, so they should withdraw altogether. Others say that they should resupply and reprovision the forts and try to launch an offensive. Then there's a middle way, an idea that perhaps if they offer a humanitarian relief, offer provisions but not arms, they might be able to prevent the Confederates from firing on the fort, but still have symbolic hold of the fortification in the harbor. That's what Lincoln decides to do. He notifies the Confederate government, which he still doesn't recognize as legitimate, through back channels that he plans to re-provision the fort with humanitarian supplies. The Confederates decide they're not going to allow this to happen. They consider it an aggressive act against their sovereign claims. And so General Pierre Beauregard orders the surrender of the fort. Major
stylish
Anderson
guy.
declines to do so. On April 12th, Beauregard's forces begin a bombardment. It's going to last for about 34 hours. During that bombardment, both sides are firing away at each other. No one is killed. But clearly, Anderson and his men don't have enough provisions, supplies, or armaments to hold out against it. And so Anderson is forced to negotiate a surrender. The Confederates took control of Sumter, and this is what launches the American Civil War.
All right.
Yeah. So, with that being said, it's kind of amazing the fact that nobody died. It was a all night bombardment, cannons. You had people firing, guns and weapons the entire night. Nobody died. But this is really the moment at which Lincoln's like, all right, this is getting out of hand.
Right.
We need to do something about this. Right. So during this time period, there's no such thing as conscription. It's all voluntary basis where you basically have to ask people their permission to essentially join the military at this point. Okay. So he calls for 75,000 volunteers in order to defend the Union and realizes it's not enough.
Right.
And so when that number falls short, that's when they start the conscription. And this is actually the first draft of its kind. So this is like where we see the initial inflection point at which governments can start calling on people and mandating that they join the military in order to fight for their cause, right? And what's crazy? It wasn't just the American citizens, it was also immigrants that were coming in. They actually 25% of the military for the Union was immigrants, like people coming from France, people coming from Germany, Ireland, like all these places where they're just trying to get away from their bad circumstances and come to America. Like imagine you get fresh off the boat and you're like, oh, I love America.
Like you're gonna fight for the Union.
He's like, here you go, boy.
Yeah,
here's a gun.
for the Union.
here's your weapon. Here you go. And you're just like, I just wanted a citizenship here.
Right.
Emotional damage.
That's exactly what happens to these people. But it wasn't as bad like that. It wasn't like you came off the ship and they immediately were like, here you go to war. We need you. What really happened is like you could still come to the United States. You got in, but it's when you became the citizen is when you became eligible for that. So they still had a chance to initially come in for asylum, but then it's as you have your paperwork and you're basically like, oh, I'm an American now. That's when you were eligible. So with that being said, at that point, the Union, even with all that manpower, they struggled very early. And so we've got two sides, right? The Union and the Confederate. And I'm just going to list out the advantages that each side had. So the Union had a population of like 22 million versus the 9 million in the South. And of that 9 million, 3.5 are enslaved people. And, they were calling on us blacks to go out there and fight for the white man. But, not everybody was cool with that. But if your master says, hey, you better get that guns, boy, and start shooting, you've got to do that. But overall, the industrial dominance, the Union produced 90% of all U.S. goods, including 17 times more in textiles so that they had uniforms. They had 30 times more shoes and boots. They had 13 times more iron. They had 32 times more firearms. And they had 20,000 miles worth of railroad versus the Southern's 10,000. So that meant they could go and move equipment,
logistics, supply, everything.
Advantages out the
what
wazoo.
You have to have to win a war.
Exactly. And then also they had the mechanized farming and the stronger supply chains because they were obviously still trading with England and a lot of these other countries internationally. and they had the means to do so because they were industrialized. So let's talk about the Confederate a little bit. Confederate, what they had is they had experienced leadership. You had Lee Jackson, you had J.E.B. Stuart, you had strong tacticians, people who were involved in that that Mexican War, American Mexican War. They had a lot of those generals, and they had home field advantage because it was really a defensive war. The Union had to go into the Confederate lands in order to establish the order. It wasn't the other way around. They were playing the defensive game, and which meant they had to have shorter supply lines. They had higher morale, and their motivation was like, we're fighting for our homeland.
Right.
We're fighting
way
against
of life.
Exactly. So I mean, they were prepared mentally for a long war to defend themselves, and so in reality, the South really couldn't sustain itself. It had limited industry, it had limited resources, and it was just time was on the North side at that point. It's kind of almost an attrition thing. But it's interesting is the South was actually, it was very nerve-wracking for the Union because the South was actually winning for a good part of the war at the very beginning. And the Union just didn't have any idea what they were doing. They had a lot of inexperienced people, and they had no
The
real
generals kept shitting the bed. The generals kept retreating or holding where they shouldn't have held, basically doing everything wrong. And this is what Lincoln encounters in the first part of the war.
Exactly. And he's replacing generals left and right because there's just inefficiency within how they're doing things. And then the Southerners, even though they're outmanned, they actually know what they're doing. They're a little bit more coordinated. But that changes during a situation called the Battle of Gettysburg. And we can pull up this little image of this.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
So the Battle of Gettysburg is like what we see as like the turning point for the war, where the Union really starts to see their first wins, and then they start capitalizing off of those wins. So by like mid 1863, the Union was bleeding men, and they had no morale. And so Gettysburg was a 3-day clash that changed that whole situation. And you had Lee of the South, who invaded Pennsylvania. They wanted to push north and show a force in order to like make the Union create peace, essentially. And so during this war and during this battle, you had over 50,000 casualties. This was the bloodiest battle in American history. And essentially, you had a bunch of places where the Unions had the high ground, and they were using that to their advantage. There was also situations where the Union positions were about to be overrun by the Confederates, and then you had some of the generals that went in, made some really big decisions to just bum rush them essentially and change the tide. And they we'll do a deeper dive later, but they honestly attribute potentially the victory of the rest of the world war to this event and the bravery of some of those Union soldiers. And so at the end of the day, Lee was forced to retreat, and the Confederacy never regained the offensive ability that they had before. So, like I said, this became the turning point. And now it became from fighting for survival to fighting for victory for the Union.
Right.
So, let's actually look at what the combat looks like. We're not going to dive into like all the mini battles because there was over 200 battles during this time period of the Civil War. But you can pause that real quick.
I will.
Let's pull up the image first, actually.
Okay.
So during this time period, you got to understand that it wasn't too long ago that we had the American Revolution, right? And we still had a lot of the same tactics during that time period, where it was a European style tactic where you had soldiers lined up shoulder to shoulder, and they're basically trading volleys. Now, here's the thing. Back during the Revolution and the Civil War actually changed warfare altogether because the type of bullet that was being used. Back then, you had circular bullets.
Musket ball.
Yeah, musket balls, essentially. And they didn't really have any control over flight. It was just kind of you just shoot and you hope that it hits your target. And also, you can't shoot them as far because the velocity changes depending on the shape. And it meant that you had to rely on having a group of people shoot a massive volley in order to hit your enemy and hope that enough bullets hit that area to kill them.
Right.
And so this is where you had kind of the rotating musket line, because it takes time for these guns to be reloaded. I think it's approximately like a minute to 3 minutes to reload. So what you would see here is you've got gentleman in the front shoots, then you've got the second round of shooters on the other side of them ready to fire their weapons at the same time. So that way you're getting a volley while he's reloading, you're shooting, while he's reloading, you're shooting, and that's kind of how that works. But the type of bullet did change to a kind of a similar style of what we see, and they also had a little concave hole in the back, which basically allowed the musket, the weapons to shoot further. So now you could hit up to 300 yards instead of like the 40 or 50 that you were doing before. And it created a lot of different type of warfare. But I want to show this video because it gives you context of what it felt like to be in the military during this time period. Didn't matter which side you were on, dude. I wouldn't want to be part of this.
They also didn't feed these people at all. None of them got any food. None of them got new clothes. Nightmare.
Look how scared they are.
Just over that red.
You march out in the field and die. It's not a good idea.
It's a little graphic, guys, so just
nice.
crazy. Yep. That flag, boy.
Be a smart move to play dead, to hop out.
But they also there was an issue with deserters too. You know, like if you wanted to try to desert during this time period, they would just end up killing you. So you either walk in a straight line to your death or you die. And not all the tactics were all straight lines, because like you've got situations where there's battles in like the forest, you've got battles that happen where like the line is
but
broken.
A lot of it was literally
a lot of it was in open
line
fields.
Up and kill each other. Yeah.
Right. And so that was why flanking was a really big thing during this time period. Let's say you've got a line of people that's like this, okay? You come around and you flank them from the side. You don't have enough time for these people to all turn and start shooting this way, because you're going to hit the guy next to you. So, but this group of people, they can easily just shoot a volley, and if they don't hit this guy, they'll hit the next guy, and they might hit the next guy. And so that's why flanking became a really big thing during this time period. And if you could flank the enemy, then you could typically, move their position. And typically when somebody got flanked, they would try to fight back, but often they actually ran away, because it was like almost certain that you were going to die because you didn't have enough time to react, especially if you're trying to reload or something like that. And bayonets were a big thing, where you're just like, once you're getting close enough and you don't have the gun, you're just going to go and stab people.
Right.
Yeah. And that's how it really goes. And so this whole situation with the turning point of Gettysburg, the Union starts winning a bunch of battles. But what really puts the nail in the coffin for the Confederate people is this new plan that the Union had, which was called Sherman's March. And let's pull up the graphic of that. Because Sherman's March was basically the Union knew they had the manpower, they knew they had the weapons, they knew they had every advantage, and they were like, you know what? Rather than play this long game out, let's just overwhelm them and crush them. Zoom out just a little bit. Yeah, there you go. So take a look at this. Essentially what this was is like Sherman's March to the sea. And their strategy was basically go in, you do a new campaign, It's basically you're trying to just take the war to the southern people and just destroy their infrastructure, incapacitate their rail networks, their troops, everything, local supplies, get rid of it all essentially. And this is really what they did, and they played this out during the rest of the last year of the Civil War during 1864. And you essentially eventually had where Lee surrenders. He realizes there's no ability for me to be able to come back from this. We don't have any way to resupply our troops. And Georgia is kind of that last stepping stone for the Union to essentially win the war and basically say, okay, we give up.
I thought the capital of Georgia was Atlanta.
It is.
Okay, well, it says
no, not sorry. It isn't.
It's Mildavage or
no,
Edgeville.
Maybe during that time period, but
dude, is that true?
No, the capital now.
They may have changed it.
We sound retarded right now, but
that's what the graphic
I know
says.
the capital of Georgia is not that capital. Capital of Georgia, yeah, it is Atlanta. Okay, so
I don't know. That's what the graphic says. They lost so bad
they
had to change the state capital. Apparently.
Okay. I don't know what that is about, but maybe during that time period. Here's the thing: there's a lot of these regions changed too.
Right, and it was a new period
of time period, and also Georgia was still being established in certain aspects.
So November 15th, Union troops led by Sherman, they leave Atlanta, they head towards Savannah. November 22nd, a Georgia militia suffers heavy casualties while unsuccessfully opposing one of Sherman's Union armies near Griswoldville. November 23rd, Sherman Sherman captures the Georgia Capitol. November 25th, Sherman reaches Sandersville. December 13th, Union forces capture Fort McAllister. And then December 21st, Sherman's armies capture Savannah. And Savannah is the only city they didn't burn down in Georgia. And you can still go there and see all the beautiful colonial buildings and all the old architecture from the 18th and 17th centuries. It's all there. It's very pretty. It's one of the oldest cities in America. And they didn't burn it down because they gave up all their cotton. They're like, here, you can have this. Just please don't torch our place to the ground.
Yeah, it's true. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this whole war ended up being the costliest war that we had for America. And you had over 620,000 deaths that happened. And that's a lot of deaths, guys. And that's all Americans, essentially. And then you got immigrants that are in there, but they're also American citizens now at that point. But, the Union's preserved. And, they say slavery was abolished at the point at which the war was over. But it really wasn't that straightforward, because you got to understand, during this time period, the Reconstruction after the war is a little bit more tricky than what you would think. Just because you lose the war doesn't mean you give up all the things that made you money in the first place when it came to slavery. So we're going to watch this little clip. It's going to be the last clip of the Reconstruction post-Civil War. And it's going to break down what this looks like.
After the Civil War ended, the United States had to reintegrate both a formerly slave population and a formerly rebellious population back into the country, which is a challenge that we might have met, except Abraham Lincoln was assassinated and we were left with Andrew, I am the third worst president ever Johnson. I'm sorry, Abe, but you don't get to be in the show anymore. So Lincoln's whole post-war idea was to facilitate reunion and reconciliation, and Andrew Johnson's guiding Reconstruction principle was that the South never had a right to secede in the first place. Also, because he was himself a Southerner, he resented all the elites in the South who had snubbed him, and he was also a racist who didn't think that blacks should have any role in Reconstruction. Trifecta! So between 1865 and 1867, the so-called period of presidential Reconstruction, Johnson appointed provisional governors and ordered them to call state conventions to establish new, all-white governments. And in their 100% whiteness and oppression of former slaves, those new governments looked suspiciously like the old Confederate governments they had replaced. And what was changing for the former slaves? Well, in some ways, a lot. Like Fisk and Howard universities were established, as well as many primary and secondary schools, thanks in part to the Freedmen's Bureau, which only lasted until 1870, but had the power to divide up confiscated and abandoned Confederate land for former slaves. And this was very important because to most slaves, land ownership was the key to freedom. and many felt like they'd been promised land by the Union Army, like General Sherman's Field Order 15 promised to distribute land in 40-acre plots to former slaves. But that didn't happen, either through the Freedmen's Bureau or anywhere else. Instead, President Johnson ordered all land returned to its former owners, so the South remained largely agricultural, with the same people owning the same land, and in the end, we ended up with sharecropping. Let's go to the thought bubble. The system of sharecropping replaced slavery in many places throughout the South. Landowners would provide housing to the sharecroppers. No, thought bubble, not quite that nice. There you go. Also tools and seed, and then the sharecroppers received, get this, a share of their crop, usually between a third and a half, with the price for that harvest often set by the landowner. Republicans in Congress weren't happy that this reconstructed South looked so much like the pre-Civil War South, so they took the lead in Reconstruction after 1867. Radical Republicans felt the war had been fought for equal rights and wanted to see the powers of the national government expanded. Few were as radical as Thaddeus Tommy Lee Jones Stevens, who wanted to take away land from the Southern planters and give it to the former slaves, but rank-and-file Republicans were radical enough to pass the Civil Rights Bill, which defined persons born in the United States as citizens and established nationwide equality before the law regardless of race. Andrew Johnson immediately vetoed the law, claiming that trying to protect the rights of African Americans amounted to discrimination against white people, which so infuriated Republicans that Congress did something it had never done before in all of American history. They overrode the presidential veto with a 2/3 majority, and the Civil Rights Act became law. So then Congress really had its dander up and decided to amend the Constitution with the 14th Amendment, which defines citizenship, guarantees equal protection, and extends the rights in the Bill of Rights to all the states, sort of.
Yep. So, this being said, Andrew Johnson actually got impeached. And it's because a lot of the things that he did during this time period didn't actually help with the Reconstruction, and his policies were just terrible by all means. And so essentially he got impeached. We have some of the, new amendments. They actually tried to go in when they tried to create these amendments. Andrew actually vetoed them. And it was the first time where you had Congress override with the 2/3 vote, basically to ensure that, Black people had the same natural born citizen rights as, the white people. And so, long story short, we ended up.
They get to vote.
Yeah, voting is something that came in later. You had
should
the
talk about that at some
You
point.
had the 3/5 rule, where like there was a big issue where you had
Yeah, but
they were-
after the war.
this was after the war,
Okay.
but the 3/5 compromise is something where blacks' vote was essentially 3/5 worth of a vote, because a lot of these other places were very concerned about if you just had like millions of slaves,
As
just suddenly
population
have-
gets plugged in, they can vote.
yeah, they got a lot more ability to have votes, so it became Black people are 3/5 worth of vote.
And that was because for the congressional seats are decided by population.
Exactly.
So you get more House members if you have more population. And
Bingo.
a lot of these states, they had a lot of population. But
Right.
it wasn't exactly,
Yeah. It wasn't exactly, representative of the population, but at the end of the day, newly freed Black Americans during this time period, they still faced tons of racism. It wasn't like as soon as the Emancipation Proclamation comes out and you've defeated the Confederates too and declared all these laws in place, and maybe it would have changed a little bit if Lincoln didn't die like just 10 days after the war, but ultimately you still had black codes, you had violence, you still had the birth of the Ku Klux Klan, you had all these things that happened after. And by the time 1877 rolls around, federal troops end up withdrawing from those regions altogether, and that's when Jim Crow ends up replacing slavery with segregation. And that pretty much wraps up. Civil War did end slavery, but it just began another fight for the progression of the slaves and the freedom of the rights of people. But yeah, I mean that's our Civil War segment, guys.
It's very interesting. People will go, I know this, I've heard this before. I'm not an idiot. I know about Civil War. Yeah. And it's like, look, I like to think I know about things. Like I went over a few things here that I didn't know about, and I just learned a lot. So when we do these prepared segments, and when Tim does the deep dive, and when we do the research on these things, it is important for us to always look at information that we may have learned before, may have heard before. It's important for us to remember it and to put it in the context of modern life and to realize, hey, we didn't just teleport and end up here,
Right.
sitting here. There's hundreds and hundreds, even thousands, like Lebanon John was talking about earlier. There's thousands of years of this history. And if you don't know your history, you're kind of doing to repeat it. There's this whole thing. So I just look, if you like stuff like this, and we're going to do a lot more of it on all sorts of different topics, and we love it when y'all give us recommendations. Follow Tim on X, follow Truism Tim on X, and follow Gray Area Talks on X, and subscribe on YouTube and Rumble. But seriously, follow Tim on X. If you follow Tim on X, you're able to interact with him. There, you're able to interact with our video clips, and we can give you more high quality stuff like this. I mean, here's the thing: we talk about the Civil War. There's a bunch of narratives around it. And blah, 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 blah. People like, I wave my Confederate flag. Woo, that's what I do.
I love the what?
That's what they do. But at the end of the day, it's a period of our history where the federal government was expanded in response to a state problem, where the state seceded, and then Lincoln goes, "I know you don't," and we have this war.
Drafts.
And what I really take from it is, this is the last time we had to deal with the reality of war here in America. Right.
I don't think another civil. I know people like, oh, another civil war.
Right.
No, it's not going to happen that way.
Yeah, it wouldn't work out that way. But an interesting parallel to the beginning of the Civil War, people didn't take it that seriously. They're like, oh, like whatever. They go eat picnic and watch it, and that stopped really quick.
The problem is the federal government has ballooned to the point where it's got so much control over the whole system, and people are just happy enough to where they're like, it's all integrated more. So that there's not really a true reason to like, what am I going to fight New York versus California?
Right. That's a great point.
Like, what am I fighting for? I mean, the only thing you're fighting for is maybe against the government, but like, I don't have a problem with Georgia today.
Exactly.
But ultimately, the thing with this, and what I kind of just looked at the macro, it's like, people don't realize the whole changing hands of, what each party believes in. It happens very subtly each decade, each, millennium, each century. It's like everything changes, right? So like during this time period, you wouldn't think the Democrats were the ones that wanted slavery, and that the Republicans are like the free the people. And you would think like the Republicans back then act like Democrats today, right? Just slightly. So this is why we cover history, because it shows you, just because we have a system that's in place today does not mean that that's exactly the same message that gets preached by the same party down the line. It could be that at a certain point, the Democrats become like even more radical and become the Antichrist at that point, or maybe the Republicans, because they're doing crazy stuff like the Jewish Zionist conventions. But ultimately, this is why we do the deep dives, because we like to see what happens.
That's right. It's all there, and that's why we enjoy the Gray Area and getting to do it for you guys. This has been a phenomenal stream. We're not going to take calls tonight. We're getting used to daylight savings. It's a little.
I need sleepy time right now.
That's right.
I need sleepy time right now.
That's
a nice place I go to, and I'm asleep.
That's about right. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us tonight. I'm just gonna say it one more time. Follow Tim on X at Truism Tim.
Yeah, please give me a follow. I'm almost at 500, and it's very nice to see the support from you guys. If you guys really enjoy the segments here, just give me a follow and just kind of keep tuning in, because every Sunday we're going to be doing this, and I spend a lot of time doing the research.
And let them know what you wanted to research. Let them know what you wanted to look into.
I'll do another post for tomorrow.
It's super fun, guys. This is an interactive show. We do it for you, the listeners.
And I get these costumes, guys.
Indeed.
All right. That's pretty much it. Thank you, guys. Have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Good luck at work tomorrow.
God bless and good luck, guys. We really appreciate you. Thank you for being here on the Gray Area tonight.